Chapter 166. You're not allowed to go. He Yen was stunned. After a moment she asked, why? Xiao Ju looked at her and curved her lips. Her tone was as sarcastic as ever. Chu Xilan is one of Su Jingfu's people. He has ulterior motives for staying in the Liang province guard. You're too close to a spy. Do you also want to become one of Su Jingfu's people? This was a serious accusation. He Yen repeatedly denied it. I'm not. Xiao Ju snorted coldly and ignored her. Commander-in-Chief, of course I know that fourth young Master Chu has a special identity. He Yan's attitude was very sincere. I promise that the things we talk about on a daily basis do not involve any of the secrets of the Liang province guard. Furthermore, I don't know any of the secrets of the Liang province guard. If fourth young Master Chu really has the intention of probing military affairs, I will avoid him. In her previous life, she was especially sensitive in this aspect. Xiao Ju really didn't need to worry about this. Furthermore, He Yen continued, if he really has ulterior motives for staying in the Liang province guard, I might be able to get some information out of him by getting close to him like this. It'll be beneficial to us. Xiao Ju glanced at her. You're so stupid. I'm afraid that before you can get anything out of him, you'll be exposed first. He Yen, perhaps Jiang Jiao was wrong. There were more than just women in the world. Men also had a period of time every month when they were extremely irritable and didn't like anyone. In any case, Xiao Ju wouldn't let her go today. He Yen sighed inwardly and could only say, all right, Commander-in-Chief, then I won't go look for him. However, I still need to inform fourth young Master Chu's servant girl. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good to miss an appointment for no reason. Ying Xiang had spoken very seriously when she came. She hoped that there really wasn't anything urgent. Xiao Ju's expression was calm. No need. In any case, you won't be seeing each other in the future. He Yen, Xiao Ju was a very straightforward person. It was getting late. Ying Xiang came in from outside and closed the door. She walked to the man in front of the window and said in a low voice, fourth young master, the light in Miss He's room is off. He should be resting. When Chu Zhao heard this, he didn't look angry. He just shook his head and smiled. As expected. It should be Military Governor Xiao who didn't allow it. Ying Xiang said, but he didn't even give us a heads up before breaking the appointment. That's really, don't worry. Chu Zhao looked at the thrush hanging in the birdcage in front of the window. The bitter cold land actually became much more beautiful because of him, as if he had returned to the bustling countryside of Shuojing. He teased the bird for a while, then turned around and said, the more nervous Xiao Huijin is, the more it proves one thing. He Yen is very different to him. The lamp on the table swayed gently, and his voice disappeared into the darkness. She will become Xiao Huijin's weakness. The next day, He Yen went to the practice field for his daily training as usual. Xiao Ju was also present. Because Xiao Ju's mood was truly abnormal these past few days, He Yen didn't dare to slack off and trained especially hard. When it was noon and it was almost time to rest, suddenly, Shen Han and a few others hurriedly ran over from the Liangzhou Guard recruits. They ran to Xiao Ju's side and said, Governor, people from the capital have come. These words were a bit loud, but the southern mansion soldiers didn't move. He Yen felt that it was a bit strange. Why would the capital suddenly come to the Liangzhou Guard? Ever since they chased away Raida Muzizudo last time, the Liangzhou Guard had lived peacefully for half a year. Now that people from the capital had come, could it be that something big had happened? Xiao Ju had Tian Lang continue to train the new recruits while she followed Shen Han to the other side. After a while, Shen Han and Xiao Ju reappeared, followed by a large group of people. The leader was a eunuch wearing palace robes. He held a horsetail whisk in his hand and smiled kindly. Xiao Ju indicated to Tian Lang, and Tian Lang immediately had the southern mansion soldiers stop their daily training. The kind-looking eunuch took a step forward and said with a smile, which one of you is He Yen? He Yen, who was called out, was startled. He stood up and saluted. This one is indeed He Yen. The eunuch looked He Yen up and down. His gaze made one's hair stand on end. He Yen wasn't unfamiliar with this scene. He had experienced it before. He was immediately shocked. Could it be? The next moment, the eunuch said, "His Majesty has an imperial edict. Young master He, please accept it." He Yen respectfully knelt down. He saw the person in front of him open the bright yellow imperial edict scroll and said in a long voice, "By the will of the heavens, His Majesty summons He Yen of the Liangzhou Guard. He is loyal, brave, and skilled in battle. He has repeatedly performed miraculous feats in the war at Yudo. I hereby confer upon him the title of Mu and Lang and give him a crown. I hereby announce this to the world. By the Emperor." He Yen was startled. Mu and Lang? Seeing that he didn't move, the eunuch reminded him, "Young master He? Why aren't you accepting the edict and thanking him?" He Yen hurriedly kowtowed and accepted the edict. He was still puzzled. Why would His Majesty reward him at this juncture? On the surface, it seemed to be because of the Liangzhou Guard's war at Yudo and Jiang City. However, how did the palace find out about this? Xiaoju probably wouldn't say anything. Even if it was Mu Hongjin, she would only tell him the truth. His Majesty wouldn't pay attention to a minor character like him, especially since he wasn't the main character in these two wars. Before he could clear his doubts, the eunuch smiled and cupped his hands at He Yen. "Congratulations, congratulations. Young master He is so young and promising. Your future will be limitless." He Yen smiled and returned his greeting. He looked at Xiaoju. Xiaoju's brows were slightly furrowed. She didn't seem to be happy with the current situation. He Yen understood that this matter was probably beyond Xiaoju's expectations. Of course, the people from the capital wouldn't be here just to reward him. The main reason was to reward Xiaoju, the main general. He rewarded her by carrying boxes of goods into the Liangzhou Guard. The soldiers of the southern prefecture were strictly trained. They didn't dare look askance. The recruits of the Liangzhou Guard had never seen such a scene before. They immediately stretched their necks impatiently on the training field, trying their best to listen to the commotion. When Xiaoju followed the palace people to the guard station to speak, the recruits of the Liangzhou Guard all rushed over with a whoosh. They surrounded He Yen in the center and began to praise him. "Congratulations, brother He. You've been promoted so quickly. Does this mean that you won't be able to mingle with the Liangzhou Guard anymore? You have to go to the capital. Go to the capital. Hey, does anyone know what kind of official Mu and Lang is? Is he even more powerful than instructor? If that's the case, won't instructor have to call brother He big brother in the future? I've already said that brother He isn't ordinary. When I first saw brother He, I knew that brother He wasn't an ordinary person. It was only a matter of time before he became outstanding." Bah, don't give me advice after the fact. The crowd was so crowded that He Yen couldn't even finish a sentence. It was only when Hong Shan saw that the situation wasn't good that he pulled her out of the crowd and ran wildly. When they reached the riverside, there were fewer people around them. Xiao Mai and the others also caught up. Only then did He Yen have a gap. "Ahi, congratulations." Hong Shan laughed loudly. "You've finally gotten what you wanted. You've already completed half of your path to success." Huang Xiong twirled the prayer beads around his neck. "It's already very fast. What kind of bullshit luck is this?" Wang Ba wasn't satisfied. "Did you feed the higher-ups some kind of bewitching potion?" Jiang Jiao smiled. "Brother He fought for this step by step. In a place like Jiang, one mistake and you'll lose your life. Since you're willing to risk everything, you deserve this kind of reward." But Xiao Mai looked at He Yen. He doesn't seem very happy. Everyone looked at He Yen. When the Liangzhou Guards were fighting for the flag, He Yen acted as if he couldn't wait to immediately enter the Nine Flags Battalion and make a name for himself. Now that he was promoted to an official, he didn't seem happy at all. In fact, he even looked a little worried. Shirtu asked, "What happened?" He Yen forced a smile. "Nothing, I just can't believe it." "Ha," Wang Ba sneered. "This is called a beggar who picked up money and went crazy with joy. What's there to be unhappy about? Don't be so pretentious." He Yen didn't say anything. In fact, she wasn't unhappy. She just felt a little strange. When she was He Rufei, in her previous life, she relied on herself to fight for her merits step by step. That was why she knew how difficult it was to be promoted. Now that she was suddenly promoted to an official, it didn't make sense at all. Moreover, it just had to be Mu and Lang. It was hard not to think about it. Maybe she should ask Xiao Ju about the inside story. After talking to Hong Shan and the others, He Yen planned to go back to Xiao Ju and ask her what happened. Before they arrived at their residence, they saw Shen Muxue and Xiao Ju in the courtyard in front of the house. The two of them stood under a tree. Shen Muxue was talking to Xiao Ju. Not long after, Shen Muxue bent down and picked up a piece of silk cloth from a box on the ground. Among the gifts bestowed by the emperor, there were probably precious fabrics. Unfortunately, Xiao Ju didn't have a family and Shen Muxue was the only girl in the Liang province guards. Naturally, these fabrics were given to Shen Muxue. Shen Muxue seemed to be very happy. She held the silk cloth and thanked Xiao Ju. Ever since He Yen met Shen Muxue, this girl had always been cold and indifferent. She was like a fairy who couldn't be approached. Now that she was smiling brightly at Xiao Ju, He Yen stopped in her tracks. Her legs seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds and she couldn't take another step forward. She hesitated. She wanted to wait for the two of them to finish talking before going forward. Suddenly she heard a voice. "Why aren't you going over?" He Yen turned around. Chu Zhao was standing in front of her. He looked at her with some confusion. "It's not an urgent matter. There's no harm in going over later." He Yen said half-heartedly, "Why is Brother Chu here?" "I'm here to find you." Chu Zhao glanced at the two people under the tree and then looked at He Yen. "Since Brother He isn't in a hurry, why don't you take care of me first?" He Yen thought about it and said, "That's fine too." She turned her head and walked in the opposite direction of Xiao Ju with Chu Zhao. She asked, "Brother Chu, are you looking for me for something urgent? It seems that Brother He is really busy with your daily training. You were so busy that you forgot about our agreement last night. Even now, you still haven't remembered." He Yen suddenly understood. She originally wanted to remember today. Who knew that after the imperial edict came down, she would forget about Chu Zhao. Hearing this, she apologized. "I'm sorry. I unknowingly fell asleep last night. Today, I wanted to apologize to you, but it's just a joke." "Don't take it to heart," Chu Zhao smiled. "You're going to be an official today. Of course, you should be happy." He Yan's footsteps paused. "You also know?" "I found out yesterday." Seeing He Yan's confused expression, Chu Zhao said, "The people from the capital already sent me a letter yesterday. They said that they would arrive today. I came to find you last night to tell you about this. Thinking that you would suddenly be conferred, I thought it would be better to give you a heads up in advance so that you wouldn't be at a loss. I didn't think that you would fall asleep. However, looking at Brother He, you're still calm after being promoted. It seems that I worried too much." "You said that the people from the capital sent you a letter yesterday?" He Yen looked at him. "Why did they tell you?" Even Xiao Ju probably didn't get the news in advance. "Because," Chu Zhao looked into her eyes and smiled slightly, "I was the one who asked His Majesty to confer Brother He as an official." It was actually him? Even though He Yen had many guesses, she never thought of this possibility. She only asked, "Why is Brother Chu doing this?" Chu Zhao continued to walk forward and said softly, "When we were in Jiang City, you and I both personally saw the ferocity of the Yuchuo soldiers. Beside the canal, Brother He gave me clothes that could resist water and fire. I was very grateful. War was cruel, but Brother He was not afraid at all. I saw Brother He's bravery and fearlessness. Before this, I also heard about Brother He's fierce battle with Raida Musi. For the great way to have a hero like Brother He, it is the great way's fortune. I don't know why Military Governor Xiao is not willing to promote you, but I think that if I can help Brother He build a career, I am very willing to help." These words didn't sound like there was anything wrong with them, but for some reason, He Yen still felt that it was strange. After thinking, she said, "But Brother Chu's actions really surprised me." "You don't look like you're happy about being promoted?" he asked. "I was just at a loss for a moment." Chu Zhao looked at her. After a moment, he smiled. "I thought you would be very happy. After all, after becoming an official, you are one step closer to Military Governor Xiao. Since you like him, you don't have to always be distressed about your status." He Yen almost choked on her own saliva. She suddenly looked at Chu Zhao. What did you say? Brother He, don't you like military governor Xiao very much? Chu Zhao smiled gently and touched his nose. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to be so sad when you saw Dr. Shen and military governor Xiao together just now. I didn't. He Yen instinctively retorted. Chu Zhao smiled but didn't say anything. He didn't force her to answer, but he also didn't go along with her words. For a moment He Yen was very depressed. She wondered if she had missed many details in the past few days. How could she see clearly all of them? Lu Buang, Lin Shuanghe, and even Chu Zhao? Was she so obvious? She had clearly been very restrained, polite, and cautious. Chu Zhao looked into the distance. In fact, military governor Xiao may not necessarily not have you in his heart. After all, with military governor Zhao's temperament, he has already taken care of brother He a lot. He Yen asked, do you think so? If brother He wants to know military governor Zhao's feelings, it's actually very simple. Chu Zhao smiled and said, I can help you sound him out. How do you want to sound him out? He Yen was puzzled. The man in front of her suddenly approached her. He Yan's back was against a tree. When he came so close, she almost punched him out of reflex. The man's face stopped in front of He Yen. There was a smile in his eyes, which was especially intoxicating. It's very simple. Brother He is a girl and doesn't understand men's possessiveness. If I deliberately act very close to you, if military governor Xiao has you in his heart, he will definitely be very angry. If he is indifferent, then you don't have to spend too much effort on him. So, this is a very simple way. He Yen silently repeated his words in her heart before she understood what he meant. She couldn't wait to recite the 36 stratagems backwards when it came to marching and fighting, but this was the first time she heard about such a thing. She immediately asked, according to you, isn't this using you? Chu Zhao still looked at her with a smile, and his eyes were extremely gentle. If it's brother He, it doesn't matter if I use you. What he said was really touching. But He Yen stood up straight and took a step to the side to avoid his chest. Thank you for your kindness, brother Chu, but I don't want to do this. Chu Zhao's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. But I think I understand what you're trying to say. But how can you mix your feelings with other people's feelings? When I like someone, no matter if I say it openly or never say it for the rest of my life, it's always open and above board. If I still have to spend so much effort to probe and guess, wouldn't it be very tiring? Even if I get this kind of feeling, it won't be what I want. Brother Chu, haven't you heard of this saying? Using a lie to verify a lie will only lead to another lie. In the end, I won't know what's real and what's fake. He Yen didn't say anything. After all, Xiao Ju didn't like Chu Zhao very much. Even if Xiao Ju didn't like her, she would still fly into a rage if she saw He Yen and Chu Zhao together. If she misunderstood because of this, wouldn't she be overthinking? Chu Zhao was stunned for a moment. Brother He, aren't you curious about brother He's position in military governor Zhao's heart? I'm not curious. He Yen answered straightforwardly, and Chu Zhao didn't say anything for a while. Fourth young Master Chu, I've never wanted him to know. He Yen said, I don't plan to let him know in the future. So, I appreciate your kindness. You don't want to be with him? Things in the world change rapidly. Fourth young Master Chu can only be sure of the word, together, for a while, and not for a lifetime. The only thing I can be sure of is my own heart. Chu Zhao looked at He Yen, and his lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. After a moment, he recovered his previous smile. Since this is brother He's intention, I can't make a decision on my own. However, what I said just now will always be valid. If brother He changes his mind one day and wants to use me, I won't refuse. He Yen also smiled, and his tone was especially firm. That day won't come. He Yan's figure gradually disappeared into the distance. Ying Xiang walked out of the room and said softly, Fourth young master. Chu Zhao looked at his hands. They were empty. He clicked his tongue and said, he actually refused. Miss he doesn't plan to let military governor Xiao know about his feelings. Ying Xiang sighed. He doesn't want to make things difficult for military governor Xiao. Chu Zhao smiled faintly. There's actually such a stupid woman in the world. She doesn't want to fight for it, nor does she want to be with it. She's guarding an unseen and untouchable feeling, and she thinks that it's the most noble thing in the world. Ridiculous. This made him think of Yi Runmei. She was the same. Women who sacrificed themselves for love were all so stupid that people looked down on them. Ying Xiang looked down and didn't say anything. After a while, she heard Chu Zhao say, "Let's go." He Yan slowly walked back. She never thought that it would be Chu Zhao who asked Emperor Wen Xian to make her an official. The reasons Chu Zhao gave her sounded very reasonable. If He Yan was really a new recruit who didn't know anything and suddenly received the title, he would probably be wild with joy. Even if he had any prejudices or suspicions towards Chu Zhao, they would instantly vanish into thin air. He would even blame himself in his heart for measuring the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. However, she wasn't a new recruit who didn't know anything. She was Fei Hong, who was very familiar with military affairs. Therefore, He Yan knew better than anyone else that Muan Lang was just an official without any real power. It sounded like a fourth-ranked official, but in reality, she couldn't mobilize any soldiers. In her previous life, she couldn't rely on anyone and could only start as a new recruit. She didn't know how many merits she sold to her superiors to get a small official position. Her small official position gradually rose until no one could hide her merits. Finally, she was valued by the emperor. But now, she seemed to have reached the heavens in a single step. In reality, she didn't have as much power as a centurion. If Chu Zhao only asked for a title from the emperor, and the emperor himself decided what official he wanted, then this matter was still fine. But if the position of Muan Lang was personally proposed by Chu Zhao, then there was a deeper meaning behind it. He asked for a title for himself, but he asked for an official position without any real power. What exactly was he scheming? In the room, Fei Nu and Lin Shuanghe stood and looked at the person standing in front of the window. Mai He Mimi became an official? Lin Shuanghe was confused. Didn't you say that you have to wait until you return to Shuojing to see the emperor? What's going on? Young Master Lin, Fei Nu couldn't help but say. This time, it was fourth young Master Chu who asked for a title from the emperor. Chu Xilan? Lin Shuanghe frowned. What does it have to do with him whether Mai He Mimi becomes an official or not? What kind of solicitude is he trying to show? Xiao Ju's expression was calm, but when she looked carefully, there was a hint of coldness in her eyes. Fei Nu sighed. It's not a matter of solicitude or not. It's not a good thing for her to become an official now. Lin Shuanghe stopped waving his fan. He looked at Fei Nu, then looked at Xiao Ju. What do you mean? I don't understand. I originally wanted to wait until we returned to the capital to ask for a title for her as a woman, Xiao Ju said calmly. Chu Xilan took the first step. It seems that he helped He Yan, but in fact, he planted a hidden danger. One day in the future, He Yan's identity will be exposed. He will be guilty of deceiving the emperor, and his family will be implicated. Lin Shuanghe sucked in a breath of cold air. He stammered, "No, it can't be. Didn't Chu Xilan already know about Mimi's identity as a woman? It's been such a long time. Didn't he keep it a secret? In the future, it shouldn't be exposed, right? This is Chu Xilan's brilliance." Xiao Ju sneered. He only wanted to deal with me. He Yan was just a tool that could be used. Chu Zhao did keep it a secret for He Yan. He didn't announce He Yan's identity to the world, but he turned around and asked for a title for He Yan. He successfully turned He Yan's identity into a trap. If this didn't happen, He Yan's identity as a woman would be revealed one day. He could use all kinds of reasons to deal with it. But after the emperor rewarded him and made him an official, it would be different. He Yan would become the best knife to stab Xiao Ju in the heart. This was Chu Xilan's plan. Chapter 167. The door was right in front of him. He Yan hesitated for a moment. In the end, he did not enter his own room. Instead, he walked to Xiao Ju's door and gently knocked on it. After a while, he heard Xiao Ju's voice. "Come in." The door was not locked. He Yan opened the door and poked his head in. There was no one else in the room. Only Xiaoju was standing. He had already changed into his inner clothes and was probably going to rest. He Yen hesitated for a moment. "Commander-in-Chief, are you going to rest?" "What's the matter?" He Yen entered the room and closed the door behind him. When she walked in, she didn't know what to say for a moment. After pausing for a moment, she looked at Xiaoju and said, "I've been promoted to an officer." "Commander-in-Chief, what's going on?" "What's going on?" Xiaoju said coldly. "Didn't Chu Xilan tell you?" He actually guessed it. He Yen stepped forward. "Commander-in-Chief, you know that it was 4th young Master Chu who requested for me to be promoted." Xiaoju's gaze focused on her face. She sneered slightly. "You have a good relationship with him." "No, Commander-in-Chief, you've wronged me," He Yen said. "I only found out today that 4th young Master Chu requested for me to be promoted. I was also puzzled. Why would he request for me to be promoted without any reason? Didn't Chu Xilan see that you haven't been promoted for a long time under me, so he personally requested for you to be promoted?" Xiaoju turned around and hung In Qiu on the wall. Her voice was full of sarcasm. "Lady, he has good relations with people, so good that it's unexpected." Why did her words sound so strange? He Yen frowned. "I didn't ask for this. Commander-in-Chief, you can't take out your anger on me. I've said it before." Xiaoju's eyes were cold. "It's your business if you like Chu Xilan, but in the Liang Province Guard, being close to a spy is my business." Her words were unpleasant to the ears, as if she was a mole who was helping an outsider. He Yen thought to himself, Xiaoju's temper was inexplicable, even worse than Shinmushue's. She couldn't help but say, "4th young Master Chu and I are just ordinary friends. There's no such thing as being close to her." "Governor, aren't you close to Dr. Shin yourself? Don't you also have people who are close to you?" "Befriend?" Xiaoju stared at her and asked slowly. After a moment, she smiled, but there was no warmth in her eyes. "It seems that Chu Xilan has made you happy." He Yen said, "I don't know if he has made me happy or not, but 4th young Master Chu isn't as unreasonable as Commander-in-Chief." Xiaoju said coldly, "Lady, he can go and find someone who isn't unreasonable." He Yen, she usually had a good temper and thought of herself as a broad-minded person. However, in the past 2 days, she had been upset by the matter with Shinmushue. Now that Xiaoju was being so aggressive, she was angry. For a moment, she even forgot to ask Xiaoju about the matter and turned to leave without another word. She almost slammed the door when she left, but she still remembered that Xiaoju was her superior, so she didn't dare to be too presumptuous. She closed the door properly and left with a backbone. The room became quiet again. After a while, Xiaoju looked in the direction of the door again, but it was already closed. The people who came carefully and left in a hurry. The atmosphere of hostility from before still seemed to be lingering in the air. The young man's face was cold. He waved his hand and the oil lamp on the table went out. Everything returned to silence. It was not a very pleasant night. Ever since that day when he and Xiaoju parted on bad terms, He Yen had also put in a lot of effort into his daily training. He didn't break into the door every night and sneak across the street to talk to Xiaoju. Firstly, Xiaoju's attitude that day was too bad. Chu Zhao had asked for a title for her, but she didn't ask for it. She was also wary of Chu Zhao, but Xiaoju vented her anger on her and said that she was a spy. He Yen was also angry. Secondly, for some unknown reason she didn't know Shinmushue's identity, but after knowing Shinmushue's identity, she would see Xiaoju and Shinmushue every few days. It was only at this time that He Yen found out that the delicacies in Xiaoju's food basket every day were all made by Shinmushue. This girl could recite poetry and follow Xiaoju to the border. Even her basic necessities were meticulous. He Yen asked herself honestly, if she was Xiaoju, she would definitely be moved by his virtuous appearance every day. The more he thought about it, the more depressed he felt. He didn't want to see her, so he didn't want to see her. He spent all his energy on the martial arts arena and fell asleep when he returned to his room. His life was much better. But in the end he and Xiaoju were still seen by others. On this day, He Yen came down from the martial arts arena and had dinner with Hong Shan and the others. As he was walking back, he was caught red-handed by Lin Shuanghe. Brother He. He naturally waved at He Yan and walked to He Yan's side. Recently, I've been wondering why the Liang province guard is so big. It's even bigger than the capital. Otherwise, why can't I see your shadow every day? If I didn't coincidentally run into you recently, I would have suspected that you went back to the capital. He Yan was silent for a moment, then said, I've been busy with my daily training and didn't have time to talk to Brother Lin. Brother Lin, please don't take it to heart. Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and looked at him, revealing a smile of understanding. I'm not that petty. But younger sister he said in a low voice, you and Huaijin had a fight, right? Usually, when I went to look for him, you were there 5 out of 10 times. When I went to look for him these past few days, the lock on his door was rusty. How long has it been since you went to sit in his room? He Yan scowled coldly. What sit? I'm not that familiar with him. You really had a fight? Lin Shuanghe was stunned. Haven't you always had a good temper? How did you get serious with Xiao Huaijin? He Yan had been suppressing a bellyful of anger these past few days. When he heard this, he said, how would I know how I offended him? Brother Lin, do you men have a period of time every month when you don't like someone? Do you throw a tantrum whenever you feel like it? There's no reason for you to make trouble for no reason? Lin Shuanghe rubbed his chin. I only know that when a woman has her period every month, she'll be irritable and her temper will be rough. I don't know if men are the same. What kind of new illness is this? He gave He Yan a sidelong glance. Come. Tell me, how did Xiao Huaijin make trouble for no reason? He Yan thought that since Lin Shuanghe was Xiao Ju's good friend, he must know Xiao Ju better than he did. He recounted the matter from beginning to end and said, Brother Lin, tell me, this matter can't be blamed on me, right? The governor only said this because he doubted my intentions. However, he doesn't know that I'm wholeheartedly on the side of the Liang province guard. Hearing this makes me sad. Lin Shuanghe closed his fan and stared at He Yan without saying anything. His gaze was particularly strange. He Yan felt his hair stand on end from his stare. He frowned and asked, Brother Lin? Little sister Lin Shuanghe said in a low voice, do you think that Huaijin became suspicious of you because you were too close to Chu Xilin, and because Chu Xilin might be a spy for the Liang province guard? He Yan said, that's right. Then have you thought of other reasons? Lin Shuanghe guided him patiently. He Yan asked, what reasons? For example, don't look at this matter from the perspective of a superior and a subordinate. Instead, look at this matter from the perspective of a man and a woman. Lin Shuanghe lowered his voice and said mysteriously, could it be that Xiao Huaijin saw that you were too close to Chu Xilin and, as a man, got jealous? The surroundings fell silent. Lin Shuanghe observed He Yan's expression. After a while, He Yan reached out and touched Lin Shuanghe's forehead. Brother Lin, are you sick? I think that you shouldn't stand here and feel the wind. Instead, you should go look for Dr. Shin. Lin Shuanghe, ? Look at me. He Yan pointed at himself. Then look at Dr. Shin. Do you think that the governor will get jealous because of me? He Yan said, I'm afraid that in the governor's eyes, there's no difference between you, me, and Shin Jiaodo. Maybe he's jealous, but it's like a friend being snatched away by someone else. It has nothing to do with the feelings between a man and a woman. She spoke with such certainty that Lin Shuanghe, who had always been eloquent, was left speechless for a moment. After a while, he said, what you're saying is wrong. What do you mean by looking at you and Dr. Shin? I think you're very good. I've seen all kinds of flowers. My words carry weight in Shuajing. He Yan shook his head and smiled. Am I better looking than Dr. Shin? Lin Shuanghe. Well, is my family background more precious than Dr. Shin? I treat military governor Xiao like a pearl or a treasure. I don't hesitate to travel thousands of miles to fight alongside him. Lin Shuanghe. He struggled to refute. You can't say that. You also have your strengths. He Yan smiled. Then, Brother Lin, tell me what are my strengths? Lin Shuanghe said, you're generous. You're loyal and you value friendship. You're good at fighting, your temperament is straightforward, And you're never shy. You're passionate, strong, and you can fight. If these aren't strengths, then what are? He Yan looked at him. Brother Lin, what you've said is true. Shen Jiaodou, Qi Wu, Fei Nu, and most of the recruits in the Liangzhou Guard are like this. Can we say that the governor also admires them? Lin Shuanghe didn't know how to respond. He Yan suddenly felt tired. He originally wanted to help his friend test this girl's feelings. Now, let alone test her, he didn't believe that Xiao Ju had any other feelings for her. What else could he say? This girl looked as bright and cheerful as a little sun, but why did she have such low self-esteem? It was as if she had never been treated well by anyone. She didn't even want to believe that she was favored in the slightest. Didn't they say that her father, Wu Sanguan, loved He Yan very much? A girl who had grown up being pampered was confident and proud. She definitely wouldn't be like this. Lin Shuanghe thought that this matter couldn't be rushed. If he wanted to change He Yan's mind, he had to find the reason first. He was afraid that He Yan would continue to be entangled in this matter, so he changed the topic. Forget it, let's not talk about this. It's all because I saw that the atmosphere between you and Huaijin wasn't right these past few days. That's why I wanted to be a peacemaker. You have to know that it won't be long before we leave the Liangzhou Guard. If we continue to be so distant and cold on the road, how uncomfortable would that be? He Yan was stunned. Leave the Liangzhou Guard? Lin Shuanghe sighed. The Yudo is already in front of us. Huaijin will lead his troops back to the capital sooner or later. No matter how much Prime Minister Su struggles, His Majesty won't let Huaijin stay in the Liangzhou Guard forever. The capital can't be left unprotected. The Yudo is already in front of us. What do you mean? Brother He, you still don't know? I only found out this afternoon. You were probably training at the time. I reckon that the news will spread throughout the entire Liangzhou Guard tomorrow. While we were dealing with the Yudo in Jiang, the Yudo's other army had already launched an attack on Huayuan. His Majesty sent General Fei Hong to meet them in battle and ordered us to defend Huayuan. This news was too shocking. For a moment, He Yan didn't know which one to be shocked by first. The Yudo attacked Huayuan? He Rufei met them in battle? He Rufei didn't dare. When did this happen? He Yan asked. Has General Fei Hong already gone to Huayuan? Lin Shuanghe thought for a moment. It would take Huayuan more than a month to reach Liangzhou without rest or sleep. Since the news has already spread, General Fei Hong should have already reached Huayuan and is fighting fiercely with the Yudo. He saw that He Yan's expression was unsightly and thought that He Yan was worried about the situation in Huayuan. He comforted him, "You don't have to worry. General Fei Hong brought 150,000 Fuyue army with him. He won't lose no matter what. Moreover, that's Ardaway's General Fei Hong. He Rufei is as famous as Xiao Huaijin. He has almost never lost a battle. Our 20,000 men in Jiang can already deal with 150,000 Yudo, let alone 150,000 Fuyue army. You also know that General Fei Hong is best at arranging troops and winning with fewer troops." He Yan didn't say anything. Lin Shuanghe looked at him strangely. Brother He? He Yan came back to his senses and looked at him. He said word by word, "Brother Lin, in the next few days, if there's news from Huayuan, can you inform me immediately?" "Of course." Lin Shuanghe spun his fan. "This isn't some military secret. If news from Huayuan comes, the entire Liangzhou Guard will know about it sooner or later. But why are you so nervous? You're sweating. Weren't you calm when we were in Jiang City and in such a disadvantageous situation? Could it be?" He moved closer and stared at He Yan. He Yan's heart skipped a beat, but his expression remained calm. "What? You don't trust General Fei Hong?" Lin Shuanghe said seriously, "Although you're closer to Huaijin, it's normal for you to favor your superior more. However, other than the fact that General Fei Hong likes to wear a mask and act mysterious, he's a first-rate expert in war. There's no doubt about that. You don't need to be so worried. If he didn't have any real skills, His Majesty wouldn't have appointed him as a general." He Yan didn't have the heart to listen to Lin Shuanghe's comforting words. He just said a few perfunctory words and left in a hurry. Lin Shuanghe looked at He Yan's back and muttered strangely, If He Rufei was here and saw his skills being doubted like this, he would probably vomit blood. He Yen didn't know whether He Rufei would vomit blood or not. She hurried back to her room and looked at the tightly shut door. She put her hand on the lock several times, but withdrew it every time. How was she going to tell Xiaoju? He Rufei was a fake? Because the real General Fei Hong was in the Liang Province Guard? Hua Yuan was so far away from the Liang Province Guard. His Majesty had already dispatched the Fuyue army, so the Liang Province Guard's southern Fufu army couldn't leave the city without permission. Moreover, how was she going to convince Xiaoju to bring the southern Fufu army to Hua Yuan? Was she going to say that He Rufei's 150,000 Fuyue army couldn't defeat the Yudo? She was afraid that as soon as she said that, she would be arrested as a spy. He Yen grabbed the tea on the table and took a sip. The tea was already cold, but it calmed her down a bit. She never would have thought that Emperor Wen Xian would send He Rufei to Hua Yuan. Back then, ever since He Rufei replaced her as General Fei Hong, other than occasionally showing his face in the capital's martial arts practice field, He Rufei had never truly led troops into battle again. This was because after the Western Shang and the Southern Barbarian Rebellion, the Dawei was peaceful and prosperous and didn't need to use troops. However, He Rufei had asked Emperor Wen Xian for permission, saying that he had been seriously injured in the last battle and hoped to stay in Shuo to recuperate. Since He Rufei had asked to stay in Shuo, Emperor Wen Xian was more than happy to oblige. Other people thought that He Rufei was smart and retreated in the face of danger. However, He Yen knew that young master he couldn't lead an army into battle. All these years, He Rufei had been recuperating outside of Shuo. She knew that He Rufei was good at fighting. Perhaps in order to be worthy of being General Fei Hong, he had read a lot of military books. However, there wouldn't be two identical leaves in the world. Strategies, military strategies, and habits couldn't be changed. He could fool them for a while, but he couldn't fool them forever. He Rufei's trusted aides would immediately realize that He Rufei was different from her when they went to the battlefield. He Rufei must have been worried about this, which was why he didn't lead an army into battle. However, the appearance of Yudo had disrupted all the peace. He Rufei was forced to go into battle. Then, what would he do? Ian thought about this. For some reason, she had a bad feeling about this. She knew that He Rufei couldn't lose the battle. With so many Fuyue army, if he lost, it would tarnish General Fei Hong's reputation. With the cunning He family, they wouldn't let go of the benefits in their hands. However, if he won, he would be suspected by General Fei Hong's trusted aides. If He Yen was near Hua Yuan right now, she would immediately rush to the battlefield. Unfortunately, she was far away in Liangzhou. He Rufei might have already crossed swords with the Yudo. She was deeply worried and sick at heart, but she didn't have the strength to do anything. He Yen told herself to calm down. There must be a way to solve this problem. The most important thing right now was to find information about Hua Yuan and then make plans. Just as Lin Shuang has said, the news of the Yudo entering Hua Yuan spread throughout the entire Liangzhou Guard the next day. The men of the Liangzhou Guard were all fired up. One after another, they said, those Yudo came to the Liangzhou Guard once before. At that time, everyone was still new recruits. At that time, we were still able to beat them into a sorry state. Now, we've already surpassed the past. If the Yudo comes again, we'll be able to catch them all in one fell swoop. That's right. Instructor, can we go to the battlefield and fight Yudo? We also want to fight Yudo. Shen Han said coldly, what are you all arguing about? There'll be plenty of opportunities for you to fight in the future. Right now, train seriously. He Yen stood among the Nanfu soldiers and looked at the eager Liangzhou Guard recruits. A trace of worry flashed through his heart. Shen Han's words weren't without reason. The Yudo weren't probing, they were wantonly attacking. Their target was Dawei. Since they were going to fight, whether it was Hua Yuan, Liangzhou, Shuajing, or Jiang, as long as it was within Dawei's territory, how could they escape? He just didn't know how the Yudo in Hua Yuan were doing. 2 more days passed like this. In the afternoon, everyone was training in the martial arts field. Just as they finished their training and were about to eat, they saw a horse galloping from the end of Mount Baiyue. After a while everyone was eating, a new recruit squeezed out of the crowd and shouted, "Did everyone know? General Fei Hong won the Battle of Hua Yuan." One. It's true. As expected of General Fei Hong. Those Yudo are just paper tigers. They only look strong. They couldn't defeat our commander-in-chief in Jiang, and they can't defeat General Fei Hong in Hua Yuan. As long as the two of them are in Dawei, let alone one Wu Tuo kingdom, even 10 Wu Tuo kingdoms would be useless. Everyone laughed heartily. They were all Dawei's men. When the news of victory came, they all felt proud. For a moment, excited laughter filled the air. Wang Ba took a bite of his mantou and snorted. 150,000 Fuyue army. If I were there, I could win too. Hong Shan exposed him. Then why didn't you become a general? Wang Ba was about to retort when He Yen put down her bowl of porridge and stood up. A Higu? Xiao Mai looked at her. I'm going out for a while. He Yen put the mantou in her mouth. I'll come back later. She passed through the crowd and quickly left. Brother He, what's wrong? Jiang Jiao asked. Huang Xiong drank his porridge. I'm going to the toilet. He Yen walked very quickly, leaving the recruits holding bowls behind her. She couldn't hide the surprise in her heart. He Rufei actually won? This seemed reasonable. Since he had accepted the general's order, He Rufei should have made thorough plans. Although she didn't spend much time with He Rufei, through various events, such as the dinghy incident, she could tell that He Rufei was a meticulous person who knew how to plan ahead. In order to prevent his identity from being exposed, He Rufei would definitely think of ways to not be discovered. Perhaps after He Yen became Lady He, or even before, he had already tried his best to get closer to the identity of General. But why did she still feel uneasy in her heart? Lin Shuanghe and Xiao Ju spent every day together, so he should be the first to know this news. He should know a thing or two about the specific situation of this battle. He Yen just walked to the front of the courtyard. Before she even stepped in, she saw Lin Shuanghe talking to Shen Han with a letter in his hand. Lin Shuanghe sighed. So, Hua Yuan won, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. Many people died. In General Fei Hong's military career, this should be the first time this has happened. It's said that there was a Yudo spy in the military. When General Fei Hong was fighting, he was shot in the back. But in the end, he managed to turn the tide and defend Hua Yuan. He Yan's footsteps paused. Spy? The Fuyue army was strictly disciplined. How could there be a spy? Even if there was a spy, He Rufei was a general. How could he come out unscathed? He Yen would never believe that He Rufei was able to turn the tide of a desperate crisis. Also, what did he mean by many people died? At this time, Lin Shuanghe spoke again. Speaking of which, I used to be classmates with General He. Although he can be a little stubborn sometimes, he's not a bad person. After suffering such a blow, he must be feeling very sad. Shen Han sighed. After all, they were all his trusted subordinates who had been by his side for many years. No one would be indifferent to the fact that they were all wiped out in a battle. He Yen felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Chapter 168. His trusted aides were all wiped out? He Yan's mind went blank for a moment. Then, he was overcome with grief and indignation. This wasn't an accident at all. This was murder. He Rufei did it on purpose. She was afraid that during the battle in Hua Yuan, he had already given himself away. Perhaps before he was discovered, he had already decided to eliminate the source of the problem. Since the He family could kill her, who was still related by blood, He Rufei could also use the same method to kill his trusted aides, who were not related by blood. Anger made her entire body cold. Her body trembled slightly, and her eyes turned red in an instant. She couldn't help but tighten her grip on the branch, and the branch was crushed into 2 pieces. The sound alarmed the people who were talking. Lin Shuanghe and Shen Han turned around and saw He Yen. Lin Shuanghe asked curiously, "Brother He, why are you here?" He was about to walk forward when He Yen took a step back. He knew that he couldn't speak properly with Lin Shuanghe right now. Instead, he would be discovered. He hurriedly said, "I still have something to do. I'll leave first." He turned around and left. Lin Shuanghe stopped in place. After a while, he turned around and looked at Shen Han. Did you hear Brother He's voice just now? It sounded like he was about to cry, right? Shen Han. Perhaps young Master Lin heard wrongly. Did he hear wrongly? Lin Shuanghe carefully thought back. No matter how he looked at it, he felt that He Yan's voice just now was a bit strange. It sounded like he was about to cry. At this moment, Xiao Ju and Fei Nu walked in from outside. When they saw Shen Han and Lin Shuanghe standing in the courtyard, they frowned slightly. Why are you standing here? We came to talk to you about something. Lin Shuanghe asked. Didn't you see Brother He when you came in? Pian? Xiao Ju said calmly, no. As she spoke, she entered the house. Shen Han saluted Lin Shuanghe. He still had to go to the martial arts arena. Lin Shuanghe followed Xiao Ju into the house while Fei Nu stood at the side. He closed the door and turned around to look at Xiao Ju, who had taken off her cloak. Huaijin, are you still in a cold war with my sister He? Xiao Ju glanced at him. I'm not as bored as you. Then why did my little sister He look like she was about to cry? Lin Shuanghe muttered to himself, then looked at him. You should treat my little sister He better these few days. I don't know what happened between her and Chu Xilan, but I can tell that she's been in low spirits these days. My little sister He has an inferiority complex deep in her heart. She loves Chu Xilan but can't have him. If you continue to be so cold to her, she's still a little girl. It's inevitable that she'll be sad. Lin Shuanghe winked at Fei Nu, hinting for Fei Nu to follow up with a few words. Isn't that right, Fei Nu? Fei Nu stood straight and pretended not to hear him. He Yan had an inferiority complex in his heart? There was no one more arrogant and conceited than He Yan in the Liang province guards. The word, inferiority complex, had nothing to do with He Yan. He didn't know how Lin Shuanghe could tell. When Xiao Ju heard this, her expression became even colder. A trace of mockery appeared at the corner of her mouth. That's Chu Xilan's business. Lin Shuanghe thought to himself, why are they all so stubborn? Thinking about it carefully, He Yan couldn't be blamed for not believing that Xiao Ju was interested in her. With Xiao Ju's cold and emotionless attitude, even if it was Lin Shuanghe, he would also be suspicious. How was this like liking her? They were more like enemies. If you don't have anything else to say, you can leave first, Xiao Ju said. I have something to say to Fei Nu. He was going to get down to business. Lin Shuanghe didn't dare to disturb him. He said, okay, you guys talk. I'll leave first. I'll come find you later. After Lin Shuanghe left, Fei Nu locked the door and walked to Xiao Ju's side. Commander-in-Chief, the battle in Huayuan. It's a reenactment of the Battle of Mingshui. Xiao Ju interrupted him. Fei Nu was silent for a moment. There doesn't seem to be any problems, but it can't stand up to scrutiny. General Fei Hong brought 150,000 soldiers and horses. With his past military achievements, it shouldn't have been such a tragic victory. Not only that, the young man leaned back in his chair and narrowed his eyes slightly. His hand was extremely white as he touched the teacup in front of him. He said lightly, his trusted lieutenants all died in battle. There's no such coincidence in the world. General Fei Hong's trusted aides were all lieutenants who had followed him through bloody battles and killed their way out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood. It wasn't their first time on the battlefield. Although there was a spy, it was still possible to deceive others, but it was still a bit difficult to deceive them. Moreover, with the Battle of Mingshui as a precedent, looking at the Battle of Huayuan now, he felt that there were loopholes everywhere. Young master, do you think, rather than an accident, it's more likely to be silenced? Xiao Ju replied lightly. Fei Nu was silent. If it was to be silenced, what was the reason for it? For example, in the Battle of Mingshui, Xiao Zhongwu and his trusted aides didn't survive. But now He Rufei was still alive. He Rufei wasn't one of the targets. Then, what secret did He Rufei want to hide? That was why she killed all of her trusted aides. What was the secret that He Rufei wanted to hide? Xiao Ju looked down. After a while, he looked up at Fei Nu. Go and tell Wanning, I want to know everything about the Battle of Huayuan from beginning to end. Fei Nu accepted the order and left. Xiao Ju leaned back in his chair, his gaze falling on the swaying branches in front of the window. He had been schoolmates with He Rufei. He Rufei was a very stubborn, simple to the point of stupidity, and a very persistent person. He wasn't surprised that He Rufei later became General Fei Hong. If a person was particularly persistent in something, then that person would succeed no matter what he did. But Xiao Ju still doubted that He Rufei would kill his trusted aides for many years for some secret. This wasn't like the He Rufei of the past. But nothing was absolute. People's hearts were fickle. Perhaps He Rufei had changed a long time ago. He Yan had been sitting by the Wulu River. It was already late at night. Ever since she heard from Lin Shuanghe that He Rufei's trusted aides had all died in the Battle of Huayuan, she had left the crowd. There was no one by the Wulu River, so she could sit here and vent her emotions. When she was He Rufei's trusted aides, they were all brothers who had survived with her on the battlefield step by step. They had gone through life and death together, so their friendship was deeper than others. He Yan originally thought that even if He Rufei was afraid of his identity being exposed, he would at most stop leading troops to war, or say that he was ill and rarely see his old friends. But He Rufei was more vicious than she thought. He didn't stop until the end and killed all of his lieutenants. What were they thinking before they died? Maybe someone had noticed that He Rufei was not right, or maybe no one had noticed. Maybe when they died, they didn't expect that they would die in the hands of their trusted generals. They didn't die under the butcher's knife on the battlefield, but died under the ugly and treacherous strife of their own people. How absurd, how unreasonable. Pa! The whip fell heavily on the huge rock in front of her, breaking a corner of the too. He Yan fiercely lashed out with the long whip in her hand, as if she wanted to vent all of the grief and anger in her heart. Her voice spread far and wide on the empty riverbank. She didn't know how much time had passed until the whip struck the huge rock. The colorful tassel hanging on the wooden handle was sent flying. He Yan stopped to catch her breath and looked at her hands. She didn't feel it when she was venting, but now her hands were full of red marks. She finally felt tired. She put away the long whip at her waist and walked over to the colorful tassel that had been sent flying to the side. Half of the colorful tassel was in the river, while the other end fell into the too. He Yan bent down to pick it up and saw that the small pomegranate flower had been broken in half. He Yan stared straight at the pomegranate flower that had been broken in half. In an instant, her mind was filled with memories of the past when she celebrated with her brothers in the military camp with a smile. She couldn't help but feel sad. She sat down on the ground and buried her head in her arms. She couldn't help but sob softly. She rarely shed tears for herself, but now she couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. The sun didn't kill Boren, but Boren died because of her. For a moment, guilt, self-blame, sadness, and anger intertwined. Other than crying in pain, she couldn't think of anything else. In the wilderness, there was only the low sound of the wind. The wind was cold, colder than the snow in the desert. Someone's footsteps sounded. At first, it was only light, but later, it stopped a few steps away from her. The cold voice almost blended into the night. He called He Yan by her name. He Yan. He Yan didn't have time to wipe away her beautiful tears. She subconsciously raised her head and turned to look. The young man was wearing brocade clothes and green boots. He was handsome and beautiful. His bright black eyes were fixed on her, and his expression was indifferent. Commander-in-Chief. He Yan reached out and wiped away the tears on her face. She said as if nothing had happened, "Why are you here?" He Yan didn't say anything. His gaze fell on He Yan's palm. He Yan was still holding the colorful tassel in her hand. Half of the tassel was exposed. After a moment, Xiao Ju looked away and asked, "Why are you crying?" He Yan's heart shrank. She wanted to find a place where there was no one around to vent. She didn't expect Xiao Ju to come here. What was this? She couldn't tell the truth, but the colorful tassel in her hand reminded her. He Yan thought for a moment and said, My tassel is broken. I was anxious." Afraid that Xiao Ju wouldn't believe her, He Yan opened her palm and showed her the broken pomegranate flower. "Look, it's broken in half. I'm afraid it can't be repaired." She was still dressed like a teenager. Her eyes were red. The last time she looked like this was when Lu Buang passed away. He Yen was definitely not a person who would cry because of a colorful tassel. For a moment, Lin Shuanghe's words floated in Xiao Ju's ears. My sister, he has an inferiority complex deep in her heart. She loves Chu Xilan but can't get him. You're still a little girl after all. It's inevitable that she'll be sad. She loves but can't get him? Yes, as early as the last time Chu Xilan stood her up on Mount Baiyue, she had already seen He Yan's depressed look. He Yan saw the young man in front of her walk up to her and lean over to look at her. His eyebrows were very beautiful and he was very close to her. He Yan felt inexplicably afraid. The young man's voice was also calm. He said, "Do you like her so much? No matter how sad you are, you still want to persist?" He Yan widened her eyes slightly. What did he mean by that? He stared at her silently. His eyes were like the night sky in the city, deep and shallow, clear and indifferent. After a long time, Xiao Ju stood up straight. With her back to him, she said indifferently, "You'll affect the southern prefecture soldiers resting nearby. Go back." After saying this, he left without looking back. After he left, He Yen wiped her face with her sleeve, stood up, and looked back at the river in the distance. She couldn't let He Rufei go on like this. He Rufei had already lost his mind and would only get worse in the future. There wasn't much time left for her. She probably couldn't stay in the Liang Prefecture Guards forever. She had to return to Shuajing as soon as possible. He Yen thought so in her heart. But before she could think of a way to return to Shuajing, someone left before her. It was Chu Zhao. On this day, the training in the martial arts field ended. He Yen ate and walked back to her room by herself. These days, because of the battle in Huayuan, she felt terrible. Every day, she seemed to have a lot on her mind. No one knew what was wrong with her. He Yen wanted to continue to inquire about He Rufei, but news of He Rufei first reached Xiao Ju, then the instructors, and finally the new soldiers. General Fei Hong was far away in Huayuan. Their daily training was hard and they couldn't just focus on the distance. She walked back to her courtyard and saw a person sitting at the stone table in front of her door. At first, He Yen thought it was Xiao Ju. But these days, Xiao Ju left early and returned late. He Yen had a hard time meeting him. When she got closer, she saw that it wasn't Xiao Ju, but Chu Zhao. The weather was getting hotter and hotter. His clothes were thin and light. Because of his thin figure, he wore a green robe with wide sleeves. As he sat in the courtyard, even the simple courtyard seemed to be tainted with an immortal aura. He Yen walked closer and said, "Brother Chu." "Brother He," Chu Zhao stood up and said with a smile, "I came to find you. You weren't here, so I waited here. I thought you wouldn't come back until late at night. Fortunately, you came back early. Why did you wait outside?" He Yen sat down on the stone bench. "There are mosquitoes everywhere in the summer. You're already thin and weak. If you feed the mosquitoes, you won't have anything left." Chu Zhao was stunned for a moment. He was amused by her words. He shook his head and took out a small sachet from his sleeve. "Thank you for your concern, Brother He. However, there's a mosquito-repellent herb here. If I carry it with me, the mosquitoes won't come near." The young master of a wealthy family was indeed a young master. He was so particular about the way he did things. No wonder he never had a difficult time. Chu Zhao placed the sachet on the table and said, "Brother He, I came to find you to say goodbye again. Last time, I left in a hurry and left without saying goodbye. This time, I'll be polite." "Goodbye?" He Yen wasn't too surprised. Chu Zhao staying in the Liang Province Guard wasn't a long-term plan. The people of the Liang Province Guard trained bitterly every day. Even if Chu Zhao was a spy or looking for trouble, he wouldn't gain anything by staying here every day. This place was bitter and cold. The young master who lived a life of luxury didn't need to suffer here. Sooner or later, he would have to return to Shuajing. Chu Zhao nodded. Brother He should already know about the battle in Huayuan? He Yen didn't expect him to bring up the matter of Huayuan. He was startled and immediately replied, "Yes. The Yudo has already decided to move against Away. The capital can't do without people. Not only me, Military Governor Xiao will also return to Shuajing soon. Right now, The Yudo is still in Huayuan and hasn't gone north of Huayuan. I have to go first. After the Yudo heads north, the road won't be easy. I'm afraid it won't be easy to return to Shuajing then. Chu Zhao smiled. Moreover, I originally planned to stay in the Liang province guard until the matter of Jiang was settled before leaving. Now that you've already conferred the title of Mu and Lang, I don't have anything to worry about. These words were said in a roundabout way, as if he had stayed in the Liang province guard for He Yan's sake. He Yan said, "This one is endlessly grateful for Brother Chu's good intentions. I hope you'll have a smooth journey back to the capital." The handsome young man's smile was gentle. He stared deeply at him without saying a word. He Yan touched his face. "Is there something on my face?" Chu Zhao lowered his head and smiled. After a moment, he raised his head and said, "Actually, apart from saying goodbye to Brother He, there's something else I want to discuss with Brother He." He Yan asked, "What is it?" "Brother He." He slowly opened his mouth. "Are you willing to travel with me back to Shuajing?" The surroundings quieted down. After a while, He Yan said, "Brother Chu, don't joke around. How can I leave with you?" Although Brother He is still a member of the Liang province guard, in the end, you're still the Mu and Lang conferred by His Majesty. You can be commanded by Military Governor Shao, but you're not a soldier under Military Governor Shao. I have His Majesty's personal decree, so I can choose new soldiers from the Liang province guard to be my bodyguards. If Brother He is willing, you can travel with me. You don't have to worry about His Majesty blaming you. Without waiting for He Yan to speak, he continued, "I know Brother He's concerns. I'm also afraid that Military Governor Shao won't be happy. However, Brother He, Liang province has always been bitterly cold. You're a young man. In this bitterly cold place, it's quite difficult. Sooner or later, you'll have to return to Shuajing sooner or later. Since your heart is set on accomplishing something, come with me back to Shuajing. I'll let you see His Majesty. There's more than one path to accomplishing something. In particular, the path you chose before is truly very slow." Chu Zhao had always been good with words. He always pointed out people's weaknesses. If everyone knew that He Yan wanted to make a name for himself, he would throw out an especially tempting condition. However, He Yan wasn't willing to go with Chu Zhao. She didn't trust Chu Zhao. "I don't have any plans to leave the Liang province guard," He Yan refused with a smile. "I also don't believe that I have the ability to accomplish something right now." Chu Zhao stared into her eyes and slowly said, "You don't want to leave the Liang province guard because of this, right?" He Yan was startled. The other party's eyes contained a smile, as if he could see through everything. When her thoughts were seen through, she didn't feel the same embarrassment as when Lin Shuanghe found out. Instead, she felt uncomfortable. Chu Zhao's sense of propriety was too low. In reality, He Yan's words were a bit overboard. Chu Zhao had always been cultured and refined, making people feel as if they were bathed in a spring breeze. If a normal woman was teased like this, even if they didn't fall deeply in love with him, they would gradually lower their guard. However, the person Chu Zhao first met was He Yan. On the surface, He Yan looked honest and loyal, but deep down she wasn't someone who easily trusted others. He Rufei's recent matters made her even more sensitive. As a result, whenever Chu Zhao got close, his entire body would become vigilant. The wind blew past, and the branches above his head swayed slightly. A leaf was blown down, swaying, and landing on He Yan's hair. "You really?" Chu Zhao's lips still held a warm smile. He reached out with one hand, as if to brush away the leaf on He Yan's head. His voice was bewitching. "Have you decided whether you want to leave the Liang province guard?" He Yan, Before he could finish speaking, a cold voice cut in. "Didn't you hear her say she doesn't want to?" He Yan turned around and saw Xiaoju walking over from the courtyard. He didn't know how long he'd been standing there, or how much he'd heard. In the darkness of the night, his tall and handsome figure walked to He Yan's side, bringing with him the chill of the night. Could this be considered being caught red-handed trying to poach someone? He Yan complained incessantly in his heart. How could he encounter Xiaoju every time something bad happened recently? He was afraid that the misunderstandings would only grow deeper. She retreated behind Xiao Ju and coughed lightly. "Commander, fourth young Master Chu came to say goodbye to me. As for traveling together, it was just a joke. How could I leave the Liang province guard? That's impossible." Xiao Ju looked at her expressionlessly. Suddenly, he reached out and pretended to hit her head. He Yan was startled. In the next moment, his fingertips landed on the leaf above He Yan's head. With a light flick, the leaf slowly fell to the ground. He Yan stared at the leaf on the ground and cursed in his heart. So he wanted to sweep the leaves for her? Even sweeping the leaves was so murderous. It seemed that whenever Xiao Ju saw her together with Chu Zhao, he would be especially angry. Fortunately, Chu Zhao was about to leave the Liang province guard. He Yan rejoiced in his heart. In the future, there would not be such misunderstandings. "Go in," Xiao Ju said. "I have something to say to fourth young Master Chu." He Yan was stunned for a moment. He looked at Xiao Ju's expression. Although he was angry, his expression was calm. This person was always calm. No matter how angry he was, he would not beat up Chu Zhao. He Yan did not want to speak up for Chu Zhao. However, according to her education, if she and Xiao Ju beat up Chu Zhao, it was bullying the weak. It was wrong to bully the weak. He Yan said carefully, "Is there something that you can't say in front of me? I promise I won't tell anyone." If Xiao Ju could not control himself and wanted to hurt someone, she could help stop him. Xiao Ju tilted his head and glanced at her. With this glance, He Yan did not have any words of persuasion to say. She coughed lightly. "Then I'll go in first. You guys can talk slowly. You must be calm. Fourth young Master Chu, I'm leaving." Chu Zhao did not get angry. He only smiled and picked up the sachet on the table. He handed it to He Yan. "Give this to Brother He. I have many more. If Brother He wears it, you won't have to worry about mosquitoes at night." One does not hit a smiling person. Under Xiao Ju's knife-like gaze, He Yan did not know what kind of courage he used to accept it. She thought to herself, "Forget it. It's just this once. In any case, there won't be another chance like this in the future." After He Yan left, Xiao Ju sat down on the stone bench that He Yan had just sat on. He did not say anything. He only looked at Chu Zhao indifferently. Chu Zhao's gentle smile gradually disappeared. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth. Military Governor Xiao is very protective of his food. Xiao Ju heard this and laughed. His expression was lazy. His dark eyes were as sharp as lightning. He casually said, "Fourth young Master Chu, are you admitting that you have the intention to snatch? Why do you use the word, snatch?" Chu Zhao's gentle gaze faded for the first time. It was like a beast showing its claws and fangs, cold and fierce. "She is your subordinate, not your woman. At least," the young man curled his lips. "She is mine." Chu Zhao did not comment. "But now, how can Military Governor Xiao guarantee that yours will not become mine in the future? If you don't want to live under the night sky," the young man's side profile was delicate. A trace of mockery appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said sarcastically, "You can try." Chapter 169. While Chu Zhao and Xiao Ju were talking outside, He Yan was in the room. She wanted to eavesdrop, but even when she put her ear to the door, all she could hear was the sound of the wind outside. She originally wanted to wait for Xiao Ju to finish talking and come back to ask what was going on, but after a long time, Xiao Ju didn't come back. Unknowingly, she fell asleep. When she woke up the next day, Chu Zhao and Ying Xiang were no longer in the Liang province guards. They had left early in the morning with their guards. After Chu Zhao left, Lin Shuanghe was the happiest. He Yan didn't understand this either. Logically speaking, Lin Shuanghe and Chu Zhao had never been on bad terms. However, seeing how happy Lin Shuanghe was, it was probably because he was sincerely happy that Chu Zhao had left. Xiao Ju didn't speak in a strange tone like she had in the past few days. He Yan let out a sigh of relief. Chu Zhao's early departure was probably a good thing for him and everyone else. The Liang province guards regained their peace and continued their daily training. However, He Yan knew that these peaceful days wouldn't last long. Just as Chu Zhao had said, changes had already occurred. the appearance of the Yudo would shake Dewey. On this day, He Yen was following the Nanfu soldiers to train their horses and bows. It was already the middle of May. Summer came earlier in the Liang province guards than in other places. The heat enveloped everyone. Because the days were longer, both the Nanfu soldiers and the Liang province guards had twice as long to train. She climbed down the mountain and dismounted from her horse. Her entire body was dripping wet as if she had just been fished out of the water. She picked up a handkerchief from the side and wiped her sweat. This was the last lap. Tian Lang looked at He Yen and nodded slightly. The new recruits from the Liang province guard were able to keep up with the pace of the southern prefecture soldiers, and even their archery and equestrian skills were considered exceptional among the southern prefecture soldiers. This was truly not bad. The Liang province guard's martial arts practice field had long since dispersed. The people from Hongshan, who were waiting to eat with He Yen, were watching from the side. He Yen tied up the horse and returned the bow and arrow before walking towards them in large strides. Xiao Mai's eyes lit up as she stared at him. Ihigo, how did your archery skills improve so much? I saw it clearly just now. You hit the bullseye every time. In just over a year, Xiao Mai had grown a lot taller. Previously, He Yen could still stand on her tiptoes and hook her arm around his shoulders, but now she had to raise her head slightly to look at him. She smiled and said, "You've also become much more powerful. What's the point of complimenting each other?" Wang Ba poured cold water on them. Can you compliment each other? Everyone knew his temperament, so they didn't argue with him. They just walked towards the place where they were eating. When they arrived, they took the steamed buns and vegetable porridge. Everyone found a place to sit down. He Yen lowered his head to take a sip of porridge. Then, he heard Jiang Jiao say, "Do you know about the rundu?" The rundu? Before He Yen could speak, Huang Xiong spoke first. When I was chasing after my enemy, I passed by the rundu. It's a small town. That place is rich in grapes. The grapes are like purple jade, sweet and big. Really? Xiao Mai licked her lips. Is the rundu far away? I've only eaten sour grapes. I've never eaten sweet ones. Huang Xiong thought for a moment. It's about a month's journey from here. He Yen asked, "Brother Jiang, why did you mention the rundu?" Jiang Jiao sighed. Today, I went to look for Shinjiao. I wanted Shinjiao to help me send a letter back to the capital. I wanted to ask for a new spear. When I went in, I happened to hear Shinjiao and Coach Ma talking. Everyone looked at Jiang Jiao and waited for him to finish. It turns out that during the battle in Huayuan, the Yudo split into two groups. One group attacked Huayuan, while the other attacked the rundu, which is not far from Huayuan. Huayuan is bigger and has more people than the rundu. General Fei Hong is also guarding it. Although they suffered heavy losses, they still managed to defend it. However, the situation in the rundu isn't good. It's a small town, and there aren't many soldiers and horses in the town. If the Yudo doesn't have outside help, it's only a matter of time before the city gate is lost. It's actually that serious? Hongshan was stunned. They were far away in Liangzhou, which was practically the most remote place in Dewey. It was a place where chickens lay eggs and birds didn't shit. They couldn't get any news at all. How could the situation outside be so bad? Then what should we do? Xiao Mai asked anxiously. We can't just ignore the lives of the people in the city. Huayuan is close to the rundu. If the Yudo in Huayuan retreats, General Fei Hong can bring the remaining Fuyue army to support the rundu. Shi Tu said seriously. The rundu won't fall. That's good. Hongshan was relieved. With General Fei Hong and the Fuyue army, the rundu will be saved. While everyone was talking, Jiang Jiao looked at He Yen. Brother He, why aren't you saying anything? He Yen lowered her head and didn't say anything. She didn't touch the food in front of her either. No one knew what she was thinking about. When she heard Jiang Jiao's question, she raised her head. Her eyes were shockingly bright, as if there was a fire burning in them. Everyone was shocked. Are you okay? Wang Ba waved at her suspiciously. He Yen took a deep breath. I'm fine. She asked Jiang Jiao, do you know what's the situation in the rundu? Jiang Jiao shook his head. I only heard half of it before Shinjiao found out. Shin Jiaodo didn't want to tell me the details. I think he's afraid that the Liangzhou soldiers' morale would be unstable. He sighed again. But I don't understand. We came so far away and trained so hard every day. Isn't it so that we can defend our country when the enemy invades? Now, the people of Dawei are suffering, but we're still training as usual. If this isn't deceiving ourselves, then what is? What's the point of joining the army? The young men already had a ball of fire in their hearts, and when they encountered an enemy coming to their doorstep, they couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. It would be harder than ascending to the heavens for them to pretend that they didn't know anything. You're wrong, Hongshan said. If they don't need us, it means that the situation isn't that bad. The Yudo isn't that arrogant. If they really need us, it means that they've already lost their composure to the point of no return. The people of Dawei will suffer even more. Wouldn't that be worse? Jiang Jiao thought about it and felt that what Hongshan said made sense. He didn't say anything else. Xiaomai asked, Go, do you think that General Fei Hong will win or lose after they reinforce the Rundu? Do you even need to ask? Wang Ba answered without thinking. I heard that the 150,000 Fuyue army lost less than 50,000 soldiers at Huayuan. They still have 100,000 soldiers left. The Rundu is just a small city. There shouldn't be many Yudo entering the Rundu. With the soldiers and horses in the city, even a fool can win. General Fei Hong can even defend Huayuan. There's no reason that they can't defend this small city. I think you're all worrying for nothing. If you have the time to worry about others, why don't you worry about yourselves? When will we be able to eat meat for every meal? His words were always unpleasant to the ears. Everyone ignored him. Xiaomai looked at He Yan again. Go, do you also think that General Fei Hong will win? He Yan lowered her head and looked at the porridge in her bowl. The porridge was very thin and clear. She slowly opened her mouth and said calmly, I don't think that he will reinforce the Rundu. After eating with Hongshan and the others, He Yan didn't talk to them as usual. She only said that she was tired from the training and wanted to go back early to rest. On the way back, He Yan kept thinking about what Jiang Jiao said. Yudo will attack the Rundu? In fact, based on the distance between Huayuan and the Rundu, it was natural for He Rufei to reinforce the Rundu. Everyone thought so. Because of this, when He Yan said that He Rufei wouldn't reinforce the Rundu, even Xiaomai, who was usually the most vague, didn't believe it. But General Fei Hong has already won the battle. Huayuan can't be saved. He can't just stand by and do nothing, right? General Fei Hong is definitely not someone who will leave someone in the lurch. Hien didn't know whether to be happy or sad when she heard this. She was happy that her hard work over the past few years was seen by everyone. She was also very competent as General Fei Hong. She was sad that He Rufei was the impression that others had of her. She was completely unguarded against He Rufei, giving him countless opportunities to take advantage of her. He Rufei obviously wouldn't reinforce the Rundu. This was because the Rundu's city commander, Li Kuang, had worked with General Fei Hong for a period of time. Li Kuang knew General Fei Hong. He Rufei would be exposed as long as he interacted with Li Kuang. He Rufei knew this, so he would definitely think of ways to delay. He would probably only appear after Li Kuang died and the Rundu fell. In order to prevent her identity from being exposed, He Rufei was willing to sacrifice the lives of an entire city of people to accompany her. Back then, she had also stayed in the Rundu for a short period of time. However, at that time, the people who harassed the Rundu weren't from the Utopia Kingdom, but from the Western Chang Kingdom. She had fought in the Rundu and had formed a friendship with the people there. Now that she heard news about the Rundu, she couldn't remain indifferent, whether it was for public or private reasons. The house was right in front of her. Looking through the window, she saw that Xiao Ju's house was lit. He Yan walked to the door, hesitated for a moment, and gently knocked on the door. Come in. He Yan pushed the door open and walked in. Fei Nu was standing at the side. Xiao Ju was holding a letter in his hand. After He Yan came in, he put down the letter. After closing the door behind him, He Yan walked over and said, Commander-in-Chief. He glanced at He Yan. Seeing that He Yan was deeply worried, he asked, What's the matter? Commander-in-Chief, you already know about the Rundu? Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. You're also very well informed. I found out when I heard Chief Instructor Shin talking to someone. He Yen took a step forward. Commander-in-Chief, will the Rundu be conquered by the Yuto? Xiao Ju's mouth twitched. No, He Rufei is in Huayuan. Huayuan is only 3 to 4 days away from the Rundu. He seemed to be very relieved. He Yen gritted his teeth. Then, what if General Fei Hong is not willing to support the Rundu? What if something happens on the way there? As soon as she said this, Xiao Ju looked at her. His expression was calm, but his gaze was sharp, as if he wanted to see through her. He only said, "Do you think so?" He Yen knew that he was suspicious. However, the lives of tens of thousands of people in the Rundu could not be sacrificed in vain. She said perfunctorily, "I've never met General Fei Hong. Although everyone says that he's powerful, I can't be sure that it's just empty words. He led 150,000 Fuyue army troops to fight the Yudo a few days ago. He actually lost tens of thousands of his troops, and it was so difficult for him to even win. He's not as powerful as you and I in Jiang City. Maybe he's actually very weak. He's just a coward." When he heard about the Rundu, he retreated at the last minute and refused to support them. He's just like a coward. The person who was scolding was He Rufei. He Yen felt no guilt at all. Fei Nu's face twitched when he heard this. He couldn't help but say, "No, during the Western Chang Rebellion, General Fei Hong also went everywhere to support them. He was also stationed in the Rundu before, and he's an old acquaintance of the city's chief soldier. As long as the Rundu asks him for help, General Fei Hong will definitely not leave them in the lurch." He Yen thought that it was precisely because Li Kuang was an old acquaintance of hers that the Rundu was facing a disaster. However, she couldn't say this to anyone else. He Yen was anxious and angry. She didn't expect that her good reputation had spread so far and wide. Even if she wanted to smear it now, no one would believe her. Xiao Ju looked at her thoughtfully. "What do you plan to do?" Did she want to hear her opinion? He Yen considered her words carefully. "Governor, we've been training in the Liang Province Guard for more than a year. The Liang Province Guard and the South Mansion Guard are quite a few. Not to mention the South Mansion Guard, the new recruits of the Liang Province Guard have long been eager to see a real battlefield. Why don't we use this opportunity to train them? How about we go support the Rundu?" She looked at Xiao Ju expectantly, hoping that Xiao Ju would agree to her request, even though the chances were slim. As expected, Xiao Ju sneered when she heard this. From the Liang Province Guard to the Rundu, it takes more than a month. From Huayuan to the Rundu, it only takes 3 to 4 days. If you don't ask for Huayuan's support, the Liang Province Guard's troops will travel over land and water to support you. He Yen, is your brain damaged? He Yen also knew that normal people would think this way. Even Li Kuang wouldn't dare to think this way. However, she still wanted to fight for the people of the Rundu. He Yen insisted, "Governor, think about it again. The Rundu is only a small city. Why are the Western Chang people and the Yuto fighting over this place? As long as we take the Rundu, the neighboring Jinling will suffer. The Yuto are heading north for the imperial capital. We can't lose the Rundu." The young man's tone was stubborn. Fei Nu couldn't help but say, "Young Master we all know that we can't lose the Rundu. However, even if young Master wants to go to the Rundu, he still has to ask for His Majesty's permission. It's already been 2 months. I'm afraid that the battle in the Rundu has already ended. Moreover, if General Fei Hong doesn't provide support, the possibility of this happening is too small. You don't have to worry at all." In their eyes, He Yan's actions could be considered as groundless fears. Xiao Ju said, "The Nanfu army has its own position. You can stop thinking about it now and don't mention it again in the future." She actually flatly rejected him. He Yan sighed in his heart. Fei Nu's words weren't without reason. Prime Minister Su was eyeing covetously in the imperial court. Xiao Ju came to the Liang Province Guards precisely because she wanted to avoid the sharp edge and bide her time. If she acted rashly now, it would be hard to avoid gossip. This matter couldn't involve Xiao Ju, but what about the people of the Rundu? She replied somewhat dejectedly, "I understand." She said goodbye to Xiao Ju and returned to her room. After He Yan left, Xiao Ju looked at the flickering candlelight in the oil lamp and said, He Yan doesn't seem right. Fei Nu asked, Young master, do you suspect her? Xiao Ju shook her head and said after a while, Go and check if there have been any changes in the Rundu recently. After returning from Xiao Ju's room, He Yan washed up with a heavy heart and lay on the bed. The lamp had been blown out. The moonlight shone in from the window and fell on the floor in front of the window. It was as if a layer of frost had been sprinkled on the floor, making the summer night seem even colder. The last time she went back to the Rundu was a few years ago. At that time, she wasn't General Fei Hong yet. She was already a deputy general and fought with the Fuyue army against the Xichang people in the Rundu. The Rundu was a small city. The Xichang people killed people outside the Rundu and hung their heads on the flagpoles outside the city to show off. At that time, the Fuyue army soldiers who went with her were filled with hatred. Even though they didn't have the advantage in numbers, they still defeated the Xichang people after a fierce battle. The wound on her shoulder had been inflicted at that time. During the battle, she couldn't pull out the arrow. After the battle, she pulled out the arrow herself and almost fainted. The next day, Li Kuang's concubine came over with a basket of sparkling grapes. She looked at He Yan with a smile and said, There isn't anything good in the Rundu. These are the best grapes. Deputy General He, take your time and eat them. Behind her, there were many citizens of the Rundu. One of them was holding a chicken, while the other was holding 2 eggs. They all came to express their gratitude to her. Not long after that battle, He Yan was promoted. He Yan had deep feelings for every place where she fought a bloody battle. She knew very well that He Rufei wouldn't go to help the Rundu. Li Kuang was just waiting for death by guarding the city. Without reinforcements, the citizens in the city would eventually die under the Yudo's blade. She couldn't let this happen. If the southern prefecture soldiers and the Liangzhou guards couldn't move, even if she was alone, she would still go to the Rundu. Apart from her daily training, she would talk to people who had been to the Rundu before. She asked them what they had to pass on the way from the Liangzhou guards to the Rundu, and if they might take a wrong turn. Actually, Huang Xiong had been there before, but Huang Xiong didn't know the way, so he could only give up. Xiao Mai asked, Does a He Gu want to go to the Rundu to eat grapes? Why are you suddenly so interested in the Rundu? Shi Tu looked at He Yan's enthusiasm and lowered his head thoughtfully. In 2 days, a complete map was drawn from the Liangzhou guards to the Rundu. He Yan spread out the map on the table. According to the shortcut on the map, if she continued to travel without rest, she might be able to reach the Rundu in less than a month. But, could Li Kuang really last a month? There was no point in thinking too much. The most important thing now was to set off. He Yan carried the cloth bag on her back. Before she left, she looked at the 2 items at the bottom of the wooden drawer. She had brought these 2 items from Jiang. One of them was the dough figurine that Xiao Ju had bought for her during the Water God Festival. Now that the dough had dried up, she carefully wrapped it in a handkerchief. The other item was the wooden carving that Mu Yi had given her. The carving depicted a female general holding a whip and looking majestic. He Yan looked at it and smiled. She shook her head and put the items back into the wooden drawer. She couldn't take these items with her. If they were left here, they would probably be thrown away like the other items in the room. She had already packed everything. Before she left, He Yan turned around and looked at the door. The door was tightly shut. It was already late at night. Xiao Ju had already fallen asleep. This time, she had left quietly to go to the dangerous battlefield of the Rundu. It was hard to say if she would be able to see Xiao Ju again alive. But even if she was alive, she didn't know what it would be like when they met again. Goodbye, she said silently in her heart. She turned around and gently pushed open the door in front of her. Outside, the night was dark and gloomy. The moon was covered by dark clouds, and only a few scattered stars shone on the distant mountain forest. He Yan was stunned for a moment. In an instant, it was as if she had returned to many years ago when she first packed her things and left the He family. At that time, she was just like now. She didn't know what the road ahead was like. She didn't know whether the future would be happy or sad. She just walked forward with large strides. But now, it was different from many years ago. She was no longer confused or at a loss. She knew the direction she wanted to go and was sure of every decision she made. Just like that, she walked forward without regret. Chapter 170. He Yen had stayed in the Liang province guard for so long that hiding from the sentries was a piece of cake for her. She avoided every possible spot where the sentries could see her. She slipped into the stable outside the training grounds. The horses were slightly restless, but He Yen calmed them down. The date red horse that he had taken a liking to was especially quiet. He Yen stroked its neck and led it out of the stable. One man and one horse walked out of Mount Baiyue. They had just gotten close to the Wulu River when a few black figures suddenly appeared in front of them. He Yan's heart thumped. Not good, she had probably been discovered. A clear conscience was not afraid of a crooked shadow. She could come up with countless excuses to fool them. For example, she couldn't sleep at night and came out to train. However, the important thing was that her plan to leave had to be put on hold. It might even arouse suspicion. It would be difficult for her to leave so easily in the future. The people in front of her didn't move, nor did they call out to her. It was as if they were waiting for her to react. Hien didn't understand either. After a while, a low voice floated over. Why isn't he moving? Could it be that he's scared silly? I already told you not to pretend to be a ghost. It's too scary. He Yen. The voice belonged to Wang Ba. She took a few steps forward. With the help of the starlight, she could clearly see that it was indeed Wang Ba and her group. Other than Wang Ba, there was also Jiang Jiao, Huang Xiong, Shi Tu, Hong Shan, and Xiao Mai. Why you guys here? He Yen couldn't hide her astonishment. Ahi, you're too mean. Hong Shan patted her shoulder. You plan to go to the Rundu alone. Why didn't you tell us? We're all brothers who have been together for so long in the Liang province guard. Can't you ask us to go with you? It's not like we'll refuse. That's right. Xiao Mai was dissatisfied. I also want to go to the Rundu to eat grapes. Shi Tu slapped Xiao Mai's forehead, silencing him immediately. How did you know? He Yen was at a loss for words. Shi Tu was already suspicious when you started asking about the Rundu. The one who spoke was Huang Xiong. He looked at He Yen and said, You previously said that General Fei Hong might not support the Rundu, although I don't know what basis you have for this. But from the looks of it, you intend to go to the Rundu by yourself. You're still young, but you're so scheming. You don't discuss anything with others, and you're bold enough to make your own decisions. Shi Tu guessed that you wanted to go to the Rundu alone, so he told everyone about it. Everyone decided to go with you. At least we can take care of each other on the road. No. He Yen refused without thinking. The Rundu is surrounded by Yuto right now, and there aren't enough soldiers in the city. It's too dangerous for you guys to go. So you know it's dangerous. Hong Shan sighed. Aren't you going to die if you go alone? If we all go together, we might be able to survive. He Yen was a little incredulous. You don't even know what I'm going to do, so why are you following me? We know, Xiao Mai said. Everyone says that you want to save the people of the Rundu. He Yen, you believe that? Why not? Shi Tu said, You've already saved a lot of people from the Liangzhou guards to Jiang City. Now, there's only one more Rundu. You won't do something you're not confident in. Since you want to go to the Rundu, you must have a solution. He Yen smiled bitterly. But I'm not confident right now. Then all the more reason for us to go together. Huang Xiong pinched the prayer beads around his neck. To be honest, I spent the first half of my life chasing after my enemies. After I got my revenge, I felt that life was boring. I joined the army because I felt that I could still do something. However, I spent all my time in the Liangzhou guards and didn't do anything. Now that I have the chance to go to a real battlefield, I feel that it might be a different kind of life. These people were all stubborn, but He Yen didn't want them to take risks. The Rundu's matter had nothing to do with them. She said, leaving the Liangzhou guards without permission, no matter what the reason is disobeying military orders. Even if you survive the Rundu, you might not be able to keep your life. Jiang Jiao smiled. Brother He, you don't have to bully us. Our family runs a martial arts dojo, and there are many young masters from government officials who come to learn martial arts. We more or less know about the government's affairs. Aren't you already Mu and Lang? If you use your official seal to order us, we won't dare to disobey. Even if we're caught and punished, you'll be the one to be punished. What does it have to do with us? He Yen, for a moment, she didn't know what kind of expression she should use to face Jiang Jiao. Therefore, we can ignore all of our worries. Jiang Jiao, who had always been an honest person, displayed outstanding wisdom in this matter. We can't stay here for too long. If Brother He continues to delay here, we won't be able to leave when the sun rises. Wang Ba sneered. Why are you talking so much nonsense with him? If he doesn't take us with him, we'll immediately shout and summon all of the Liangzhou guard sentries. He won't be able to leave. If he can't leave today, we'll come every day to stop him. As long as he doesn't take us with him, no one will be able to leave. He Yen. You're a bit too domineering. How can I be a bandit if I'm not domineering? Wang Ba said impatiently. Hurry up, don't dilly-dally. Give me a definite answer. Are we going or not? They were already at this point. If they didn't take them with them, they wouldn't be able to leave today, let alone in the future. He Yen felt helpless, but in the midst of helplessness, she felt a surge of warmth. She knew that Hong Shan and the others were following her. The so-called eating grapes and going to the battlefield was just an excuse. They just felt that she was going to die if she went to Rundu alone. They didn't want to see her go into danger alone. In this world, there were bad people who did everything they could, but there were also good people who didn't ask for anything in return. I'll take them. He Yen squeezed out these two words from between his teeth. But did you bring any bags? We did. Xiao Mai showed He Yen the things behind her. We saved up a lot of dry rations and snacks along the way. However, Uncle Huang said that we didn't need to bring too much. If we finish eating, my brother and I can hunt wild game and roast them. He Yen didn't know what to say. She was still thinking about stuttering at a time like this. On the other hand, Jiang Jiao patted the bags on his body. Don't worry. I brought all the ointment and weapons. I also brought some money. If we really don't have enough, we can buy some from the market when we pass by. Anyway, you don't have to worry about these things. Wang Ba snorted. Go and get a horse for each of us first. I saw that you didn't move at all when you were leading the horse. Pick a good one for us too. Don't tire yourself to death. He probably already had his eyes on the horse behind He Yen. He Yen shook his head and said, All right. You guys follow me to the outside of the stable and wait for me outside. 6 horses were led out and obediently stood in front of everyone. We're going to go around the sentry tower. We'll take a path that will avoid their patrols and sight. You guys follow me. Don't ride a horse right now. Only get on a horse when you're far enough away from the guard station. He Yen instructed in a low voice. Everyone saw how serious she was and felt both nervous and excited. It was probably their first time doing something like this. They actually felt a taboo thrill. He Yen was also a bit nervous. If she was alone, she wouldn't think so much. However, with so many people following behind her, she had to be extra cautious. After all, if something went wrong, everyone would suffer. Fortunately, she was already very familiar with this path. Other than Xiao Mai and Hong Shan, the others had all stayed in the vanguard before. They were already well trained in stealth and surprise attacks. The group safely passed through where the sentry towers could be seen. They were about to leave the Liang province guard. Just then, a weak lantern lit up. This lantern was originally at the corner of the outermost woodshed. He Yen and the others didn't see it until they turned the corner. The moment He Yen saw the light, she knew that it was bad. She thought that it was too late now. The people behind her saw her suddenly stop in place. Hong Shan asked, He, why aren't you moving? The lantern walked out from the corner. The weak light illuminated the person's eyes. Her dress was snow-white and her face was elegant. It was Shin Mushue. Dr. Shin? This time, He Yen was really surprised. She originally thought that this was a sentry who came out to relieve himself. If it really didn't work, she could only knock him out and escape when he wasn't paying attention. However, she didn't expect that the one who appeared was Shinmushue. Shinmushue's room wasn't here. Moreover, it was late at night and everyone was asleep. What was she doing here? Shinmushue looked at them. Although her gaze was slightly surprised, she was still calm. She only looked at He Yen and said in a low voice, "You're leaving?" He Yen was silent. Then, he grabbed her hand and pushed her into the woodshed beside them. "Come in and talk." Hong Shan and Wang Ba were guarding the horses outside. The rest of the people followed He Yen in. As soon as they entered, they saw He Yan's cold eyes. She grabbed Shinmushue's neck with one hand and said coldly, "How did you know?" Everyone was shocked. Xiao Mai quickly went forward and pulled He Yan's hand away. He go, it's all a misunderstanding. I let it slip." He Yan looked at her. When I knew that everyone was planning to go with you, my brother asked me to find some injury medicine. It can be used if we stumble on the road. We don't have much left in our room. I thought that Dr. Shin is kind-hearted and has a lot of medicinal herbs. So, I wanted to ask Dr. Shin for some. However, for no reason, she suddenly asked for a large amount of injury medicine. Even though Shinmushue usually didn't care about military affairs, he was still suspicious. Xiao Mai was naive. She was easily tricked by Shinmushue. In the end, she knew that she was in trouble. She begged Shinmushue, "Dr. Shin, please don't tell anyone. I beg you." Shinmushue was silent for a long time. When Xiao Mai thought that she wouldn't speak, she finally said, "I know. I won't tell anyone." Xiao Mai and Shirtu grew up in the mountains. Their personalities were simple and frank. If Shinmushue said that she wouldn't tell anyone, then she believed that Shinmushue wouldn't tell anyone. At this moment, seeing that the situation was critical, she persuaded He Yen while asking Shinmushue, "Dr. Shin, didn't you say that you wouldn't tell anyone?" He Yen loosened his grip slightly and stared at Shinmushue. Shinmushue looked back at her coldly. His gaze was clear and cold. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" He Yen asked. Shinmushue came here alone. So far, no one had appeared to stop them. Just as Xiao Mai said, Shinmushue did keep his promise. He Yen didn't really want to hurt her. He just wanted to scare her. At this time, it was better to be cautious. "You want to go to the Rundu?" Shinmushue asked. He Yen replied, "Yes. The Rundu is still under siege. There are Yuto on all sides. If you only bring a few people with you, it won't bode well for you. I must go." "Commander, you don't know about this?" He Yen replied, "I don't know." Shinmushue looked into his eyes. "You can go. I won't stop you." He Yen frowned slightly. Shinmushue came here specially to wait for them. However, he didn't stop them. It was as if he wanted to confirm something. "You don't have to doubt me." Shinmushue said, "If you want to go, go quickly. When the sun rises, you won't be able to leave even if you want to." She must have her own plan. However, He Yen couldn't guess what it was for. He just looked at her suspiciously. On the other hand, Huang Xiong looked at the scene in front of him thoughtfully. The young man was handsome and brave. The young girl was cold and beautiful. When they were about to leave, they finally broke through the shackles of their identities. They couldn't help but send each other off. He had seen this scene before. He Yen let go of her hand and tidied his clothes. He said, "If that's the case, I'll believe Dr. Shin this time." Shinmushue still looked at her coldly. He Yen could feel that she didn't like him. She even had some hostility towards him. However, her secrecy helped him at this moment. He Yen was actually a little surprised. Shinmushue admired Xiaoju. Naturally, he would stand on Xiaoju's side. However, He Yen and his group left without telling Xiaoju. Shinmushue actually didn't tell Xiaoju. No matter how many doubts he had, it wasn't a good time to be in a daze. He Yen stood up and pretended to walk out. He said, "Goodbye." Shinmushue lowered her head. The next moment, a figure swayed in front of her eyes. She only felt her body go numb. She couldn't move her body anymore. She couldn't move her mouth either. She could only glare at He Yen. He Yen nodded at her. "I'm sorry, Dr. Shin. I still don't believe you. I've sealed your acupoints. After 6 hours, they will naturally be unsealed. However, I think that in less than 6 hours, there will be new recruits moving firewood who will find you. I'm very grateful for today's kindness. If we meet again, I will definitely repay you. He Yen cupped his hands at her and turned to walk out. Let's go. Xiao Mai looked at Shen Muxue in distress. She wanted to unseal Shen Muxue's acupoints but didn't dare. She could only apologize. I'm sorry, Dr. Shen. You're a magnanimous person. Please don't bicker with Brother He. We don't know if we'll live to see each other again. Brother He was just anxious to save people. Jiang Jiao helped to apologize. Dr. Shen, please don't lower yourself to the same level as us. The last person left. Other than the weak lantern, the woodshed once again sank into darkness. Shen Muxue sat against the hay. She took a deep breath and looked into the distance. Outside the door, after turning the corner, they were completely out of the Liang province guard's gate. However, for safety's sake, He Yen didn't dare to let them get on their horses immediately. Only after they had traveled a distance did they plan to get on their horses. This time, we're really leaving. Jiang Jiao turned to look in the direction of the Liang province guards. I wonder what it will be like when we come back. Xiao Mai pursed her lips. She was still thinking about Shen Muxue, who was locked up in the woodshed and unable to move. We're leaving, but Dr. Shen is still in the woodshed. Isn't she the young miss of a large family? She definitely hasn't suffered like this before. He gu, he complained. She's a girl. You should be more gentle. He Yen smiled and didn't say anything. However, Huang Xiong heard this and glanced at her. Brother He, you sealed her acupoints just now because you wanted to help her, right? Dr. Shen will definitely pass by the sentries on her way back. If the sentries see her and know that we left the next day, it will inevitably arouse suspicion. If you sealed her acupoints, others will only think that she was being controlled by someone and didn't deliberately hide it. That's enough for us to escape unscathed. This matter won't have anything to do with her. He Yen stretched. Brother Huang, there's no point in talking about this now. We have to hurry. Right. Wang Ba sat on the big horse. In the end, she didn't dare to speak too loudly. She shouted, Let's go to the rundu. Let's go. Their voices gradually disappeared. Only the distant sound of horse hooves could be heard. 7 people and 7 horses. Taking advantage of the night in Liangzhou, they disappeared into the wilderness. In the summer, the sun came out early. The early morning sun was not as scorching as the afternoon sun. 2 weeks later, the guards went to the woodshed to move firewood to the kitchen. They had to burn the firewood after the morning run to cook the meals for tens of thousands of people. Several guards opened the door to the woodshed. Just as they were about to enter, they suddenly saw a person sitting against the wall. They were shocked and immediately pulled out the long sabers at their waists. Who is it? That person didn't move. Their eyes gradually adjusted to the incoming sunlight. Only then did the guards see clearly that the woman sitting against the wall was elegant and cold. Her eyes were slightly annoyed. It was Shen Muxue. Dr. Shen? The guards were stunned. They quickly put away their sabers and apologized. We didn't see clearly just now. Why did Dr. Shen come to the woodshed? Did she run out of firewood to boil the medicine? She should have just told us. Why did she have to come personally? After chattering for a while, Shen Muxue still didn't say anything. The guards fell silent. One of the guards bravely asked, Are you angry? There was still no response. The guards looked at each other. One of them said, Why do I feel like Dr. Shen's pressure points have been sealed? Although men and women shouldn't touch each other, there was no need to be so cautious. However, due to Shen Muxue's special status, no one dared to act rashly and unseal her pressure points. Someone said, This is no small matter. Quickly go and tell the commander-in-chief. When he woke up early in the morning, Lin Shuanghe was eating. The summer days of the Liangzhou guards were long and unbearable. He couldn't stand the heat. These days, he didn't have much appetite or sleep. Just as he was eating porridge, he suddenly heard someone knocking on the door. When he opened the door, he saw that it was Shin Han. Shin Jiaodo? Young Master Lin, Shin Han said, the commander-in-chief wants you to go over. Normally, Only Lin Shuanghe would take the initiative to look for Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju never took the initiative to look for Lin Shuanghe. For a moment, Lin Shuanghe also became nervous. He thought that there was something wrong with Xiao Ju's body. When he hurried over to Xiao Ju's room, he saw that Fei Nu was also there. Shen Muxue was sitting on a chair. Fei Nu was pouring tea for Shen Muxue. "Commander-in-Chief, I'm fine. He Yan didn't do anything other than sealing my pressure points," Shen Muxue said. When Lin Shuanghe heard He Yan's name, his heart trembled. He walked over to Shen Muxue and asked, "What are you talking about? Huai Jin, why did you ask me to come over?" Shen Muxue replied, "Military Governor Xiao thought that I wasn't feeling well and asked young Master Lin to take my pulse. However, there's no need for that. I'm a medical practitioner myself, so I know very well. Moreover, He Yan didn't do anything else last night." The more Lin Shuanghe listened, the more confused he became. What did He Yan mean by sealing her pressure points? Although there might be some conflict between the two of them because of Xiao Ju, He Yan clearly had the upper hand between the two of them. Why would he do anything to Shen Muxue? "I don't understand what you're saying." Lin Shuanghe asked, "Miss Shen, why did brother he seal your pressure points?" Shen Muxue looked at Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju didn't say anything, so she could only answer Lin Shuanghe's question herself. "Last night, I was brewing medicine, but there wasn't enough firewood. I wanted to go to the firewood room to get some, but I just happened to meet He Yan and the others. They wanted to leave the Liang province guard. I wanted to call for help, but He Yan sealed my pressure points. There was nothing I could do, so I could only watch them leave." "Brother he left the Liang province guard?" Lin Shuanghe asked curiously, "Why did she leave the Liang province guard?" Shen Muxue bit her lip. "From their words, I heard that they wanted to go to the Rundu." "Rundu?" Lin Shuanghe immediately said, "Impossible. Everyone knows what the Rundu situation is like right now. If you say that she can't stand the bitter cold of Liang province and that her daily training is difficult, then it's more likely that she went to some bustling town. If she went to the Rundu, wouldn't she just be throwing her life away?" No one in the room responded to his words. Xiao Ju's expression was unusually cold. Fei Nu was also secretly shocked. When they talked about the Rundu, He Yan's behavior was strange. For some reason, he didn't believe that the Rundu would receive General Fei Hong's support. Although the suggestion of the Nanfu soldiers going to the Rundu was later rejected, now it seemed that He Yan had never given up on this idea. Even if she didn't have any soldiers, she still wanted to go to the Rundu. Seeing that everyone was silent, Lin Shuanghe also realized that this matter couldn't be faked. His mind was a mess. He couldn't believe that this matter had happened, and he couldn't figure out why He Yan would make such a decision. Finally, after a long time, he asked, "Miss Shen, didn't you say that brother he didn't leave alone? Who else went with him?" Shen Han answered for her. There was also Jiang Jiao, Wang Ba, Shi Tu, Hong Shan, Xiao Mai, and Huang Xiong. Other than Xiao Mai and Hong Shan, the other four were all outstanding people in the vanguard. Shen Han was also gritting his teeth. He Yan really knew how to pick. He picked the best people in one go. At this time, the door opened. Liang Ping walked in from next door. He shook his head at Xiao Ju and said, "Commander-in-Chief, we've searched the room. We didn't find the official uniform or official seal. The official uniform and official seal weren't there." In other words, He Yan had decided to leave as Muan Lang. This was really a lot of scheming. Even if he was caught in the future, he could take advantage of the loopholes in the military law. It could be said that he had thought it through very carefully. But why? Lin Shuanghe still didn't understand. Did he travel thousands of miles to die? But the people here weren't He Yan. No one could answer him why. Someone knocked on the door. Chi Wu walked in. Seeing so many people in the room, he was also stunned. Then he looked at Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju said, "Speak." "Young Master, Luan Ying sent a letter." The fourth young Master Chu, who left before, had to pass through the Rundu on his way back to Shuo capital. Shen Han and Lin Shuanghe were both shocked. What did this mean? He Yan had chased after Chu Zhao? The room was so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. The air was so heavy that it was suffocating. After a while, The young man sitting in the room pulled up the corners of his mouth. In his beautiful eyes, there was a dark shadow. Really good. Chapter 171. Rundu was a small city. To the north was the bustling Jinling, while to the south was the abundant Huayuan. Sandwiched between the two cities was Rundu. Other than the fact that it was rich in grapes, many people had never even heard of it in their entire lives. For 20 days they traveled without rest. When they were tired, they would curl up and sleep for a few hours in the caves under the trees along the way. When they were hungry, they would use the bows and arrows they brought along to shoot wild hares and eat bird eggs. On the evening of the 20th day, the 7 of them finally arrived at Rundu City. What should we do now? They stopped their horses and dismounted. Then, they pulled their horses to the side of the river to drink water and sit down to eat. He Yen looked ahead into the distance. It was a field. When she reached this place, she was familiar with the road. He Yen did not say anything. She looked for the tallest tree and climbed up. After a while, she came down from the tree. Hong Shan handed her a few roasted bird eggs that were buried in ashes. How is it? Where do we go in? The bird eggs were boiling hot. He Yen fiddled with them a few times in her hands before she peeled off the shell. The steaming hot food entered her stomach, and the tiredness from the past few days seemed to lessen. She said, "We can't go in directly from the front. The Yudo set up camp outside the city gate. Even if we can avoid the Yudo, the soldiers guarding the Rundu city gate won't dare to open the city gate." Then what should we do? Jiang Jiao looked at her. Brother He, do you have any ideas? He Yen thought for a while. I've asked my brothers from the Liang province guards before. I know that there's a small path outside the city gate. We need to go over a mountain and then take the water route. Horses can't go up, so we can only abandon them and walk. We can take the shortcut in the middle and enter Rundu City. Really? Xiaomai asked. Then let's hurry up and eat. After we finish eating, we'll continue our journey. He Yen nodded and looked in the direction of Rundu City. A trace of worry flashed across her heart. Naturally, this shortcut was not told to her by the Liang province guard. Many years ago, when she was fighting against the Western Chang people in the Rundu, she dug a tunnel in the city in order to bring in the people from outside the city. The tunnel was connected to the river, and after crossing the river, it led to the mountains outside the city. Whether it was the Western Chang people or the Yudo, it was impossible for them to take this route. He Yen was not worried about the Yudo's ambush, but she was worried about whether Li Kuang had sealed the tunnel after so many years. After all, the Rundu had been peaceful for so many years. But no matter what, he still had to continue moving forward. Everyone quickly finished eating their rations and paused for a moment. He Yen removed the reins from the horses one by one and patted the horses' buttocks. The horses galloped into the forest. "Let's go," she said. In front of the city gate, the guards carefully stared at the wilderness in the distance, not letting go of any suspicious places. In the room, the county magistrate, Zhao Shiming, was anxiously pacing back and forth. He looked at the silent man sitting in the center and said anxiously, "Commander, why isn't General He here yet? You have to think of something." Li Kuang was the commander of the Rundu city. He had just passed the age of 40 and was tall and mighty. With a beard around his mouth, he looked particularly resolute. He slammed the table and said with some displeasure, "What are you all arguing about? I already said that General He will definitely come to our Rundu's aid." Zhao Shiming was shocked by him. He was dissatisfied, but he did not dare to say anything. Whether or not the Rundu city could be defended now depended on this commander. However, more than 20 days had already passed. Huayuan was only 4 to 5 days away from the Rundu city. They could not leave the city now, so there was no way to inquire about the situation in Huayuan. There was no news at all, so they could not be at ease. There were still people sitting in the room, and the atmosphere was heavy. At this time, someone knocked on the door. The curtain was lifted, and a young woman walked in. She was a genuine beauty. She had an oval face, fair skin, and a pair of eyes that were as bright and moving as stars. Even when she was nervous, she still wore a light pink embroidered dress. Her face was full of smiles. She placed the glass bowl in her hand beside Zhao Shiming and said, "Commander Zhao, don't be angry. Eat some grapes. This is all I have. You have to eat it sparingly." One could not hit a smiling person, especially a beauty. Zhao Shiming was unhappy, but he could only put away the bowl and forced a smile. "Thank you, Miss Yi Luo." Yi Luo was Li Kuang's favorite concubine. No matter where he went, he would take her with him. She was young and beautiful, smart and witty. Everyone would love to have such a beautiful flower. However, during the chaos of war, beautiful women were not as beautiful as they used to be. After Yi Luo delivered the grapes, she stood behind Li Kuang and stretched out her slender fingers to massage his shoulders. Her strength was just right, relieving a lot of Li Kuang's tiredness from running around every day. Li Kuang picked up the teacup on the table and took a sip, saying, "Before General He arrives, continue to guard the city gate." Zhao Shiming did not speak. The one who spoke was another man. He was the president of the Rundu City's Chamber of Commerce. "Lord Li, we need time to guard the city. Right now, there isn't much food left in the city. Even the most common grain that we produce can only produce such a small bowl. If we continue to guard the city like this, I'm afraid the people in the city will starve to death before General He arrives." With someone taking the lead, the rest of the people followed suit. "That's right. We were not killed by the Yudo, but we were trapped in the city and starved to death. What is going on? Lord Li, how can you be sure that General He will come? What if General He doesn't come? It's been more than 20 days. Could it be that General Fei Hong is unable to protect himself and has an accident?" Everyone's voices poured into the room. Li Kuang slammed his fist on the table. Half of the tea in the teacup on the table spilled out. The room gradually quieted down. "Shopkeeper Wang, do you have any good ideas?" He stared at the president of the Chamber of Commerce. His eyes were as threatening as a cheetah's. Shopkeeper Wang shivered and did not say anything. They knew that it was not good to hide in the city, but there was no better way. Could it be that they had to rush out and fight against the Yudo? With just their men and horses, they were afraid that it would not be enough. There were 100,000 Yudo outside. The Yudo that had been defeated in Hua Yuan did not retreat. Instead, they gathered together with the Yudo on the other side and rushed towards the Rundu. The total number of soldiers in the Rundu was only 30,000. After all, the Rundu was only a small city. "But Lord Li, we can't just keep guarding the city like this. You saw it too," a white-haired old man said. "These days, the Yudo have been probing at night. I'm afraid they will launch a general attack on the city soon. We can defend against small skirmishes, but if the Yudo's 100,000-strong army really rushes in, how can we defend?" Li Kuang gritted his teeth. He, as the city's commander, knew this better than anyone else. Therefore, he knew from the beginning that the only thing the Rundu could do was to delay the Yudo and wait for reinforcements. He Rufei was his old friend. Although he and He Rufei were not close friends, he knew that He Rufei was a brave and fearless hero who cared about the world when they fought against the Western Chong together. Since he asked He Rufei for help, He Rufei would definitely come. If there was no news after such a long time, there was a high chance that He Rufei was in trouble. However, the Rundu did not have anyone else to ask for help. Jinling? There were no generals stationed in Jinling. There were only soldiers and horses in the city. However, they could not leave the city and come to the Rundu, which would put Jinling in danger. There were two famous generals in Da Wei and Xiao Huaijin. Unfortunately, Xiao Huaijin was far away in Liangzhou. Distant water could not quench the present thirst. For a moment, Li Kuang hated the traitors for seizing power. If not, Xiao Huaijin and the Southern Prefectural Army would definitely be able to beat the Yudo back to their hometown. They would never dare to step into Da Wei's territory again. While everyone was silent, Zhao Shiming suddenly said, "Lord Li, do you still remember that when General Fei Hong was in the city, he dug a secret tunnel that led to the outside of the city?" Everyone looked at Zhao Shiming. They were all familiar with this incident. Back then, the Western Chang people massacred the people outside the Rundu's city gate who were unable to enter the city. General Fei Hong ordered people to dig a tunnel and secretly gathered the people outside the city to bring them into the city. At that time, many lives were saved. The people were deeply grateful to He Rufei. They originally thought that they had been abandoned. What are you trying to say? Li Kuang asked. Zhao Shiming sighed and stood up. He bowed to Li Kuang and said, "We have reached the end of the road. This Xiao is already old, and I am also the county magistrate of the Rundu. Naturally, I will not leave and live or die with the people of the city. However, this Xiao's grandson is only 3 years old. Lord Li, please allow this Xiao to let my servants take my grandson and leave through the tunnel." Everyone was shocked. Immediately after, someone followed Zhao Shiming's words and said, "Lord Li, please allow the mother to take her wife and child and leave." Lord Li, please. The people here were already prepared to die. Their only concern was the safety of their families. They all begged Li Kuang to give their wives and children a chance to live. Yi Luo pursed his lips and secretly glanced at Zhao Shiming. Sure enough, in the next moment, Zhao Shiming said angrily, "Ridiculous. You all want to take your family out of the city. The people will follow suit. In the end, the Yudo won't even need to fight. I think this city will be empty. You are trying to shake the morale of the army." At the end, his tone suddenly became severe, and killing intent appeared. Everyone kept quiet out of fear. Yi Luo retreated to the side. He didn't dare to speak at this juncture. In the silence, suddenly, someone came in and reported, Sir, what's the matter?" Li Kuang frowned. "Our tunnel, someone came in." "What?" Li Kuang stood up. The first thought that appeared in his mind was He Rufei came? After all, other than the people who crawled through the tunnel in the past, He Rufei personally walked through the tunnel. He asked, "Is it General Fei Hong?" "No." The guard said, It said, Mu and Lang He Yen." Before he finished speaking, the door curtain opened again. A young man in red walked in. This was a face that Li Kuang didn't recognize. This young man wasn't very old. At most, he was 16 or 17 years old. He was very handsome and bright. The most attractive thing about him was his eyes. They sparkled like bright gems. He smiled. Seeing the room full of people, he didn't panic at all. He calmly cupped his hands to Li Kuang. "Greetings, Lord Li." Li Kuang frowned and shouted, "Who are you?" He Yen pointed to his clothes and shook out a seal from his sleeve. He threw it to Li Kuang. "This one is He Yen." The seal was real and couldn't be faked. The official robes also looked real. However, Li Kuang had been an official for a long time. This was the first time he had heard the name He Yen. For a moment he was a bit suspicious. Yi Luo, who was next to him, let out an "ah" and said softly, "Mu and Lang? Is he the Mu and Lang who previously fought with military governor Xiao in Jiang City, burned down the canal, defeated the Yudo, and was finally conferred the title by Her Majesty?" No one knew who Wu and Lang was, but everyone knew about the burning of the Jiang Canal and the great defeat of the Utopian people. Everyone looked at He Yen in surprise. They remembered that Xiao Ju's trusted aide fought side by side with Xiao Ju and was conferred the title of an official. However, they didn't expect it to be such a young man. He was a bit too young. Could he be a fake? The more everyone was suspicious, the more relieved Li Kuang was. If it was really a conspiracy by the Yudo, they wouldn't have sent a child to arouse suspicion. However, he asked, "How did you know about the tunnel in Jiang City?" "I didn't know," He Yen said. "The governor told me." "Xiao Huaijin?" Li Kuang thought to himself, with Xiao Huaijin's ability, it shouldn't be difficult for him to find out about this tunnel. However, his heart was filled with anticipation. "Did military governor Xiao ask you to come? Is military governor Xiao planning to support the Rundu? How many soldiers and horses did you bring this time?" "Soldiers and horses can't enter the tunnel." "Are your people guarding outside the city?" He Yen stared at Li Kuang. This person had been working hard to defend the city for days. His eyes were bloodshot and he looked very haggard. However, after not seeing him for a few years, he also looked a lot older. Facing such an expectant gaze, He Yen slowly shook his head. "I came here on my own. I didn't bring any soldiers or horses. There are also no southern prefecture soldiers guarding outside the city." The joy of everyone in the room was instantly diluted by He Yan's words. Li Kuang asked, Are you joking? He Yen took back his official seal and put it away. I am Muwen Lang, appointed by Her Majesty. If there is an emergency, I don't have to listen to the governor's command. Li Kuang looked at him and felt that this young man was simply inexplicable. At first, he thought that He Yen came under Xiao Ju's command. Now, he was telling him that He Yen acted on his own? He asked. Then Muwen Lang, did you come to the Rundu alone to have fun? Forgive me for not understanding. He Yen smiled. I'm here to help you. With just you? With just us. As soon as he said this, he heard voices outside. Yes, there's still us. What right do you have to look down on us? The door curtain was lifted, and beautiful silk covered her mouth. She saw people coming in from the outside in 2s and 3s. There were all kinds of people, tall, short, fat, and thin. Other than He Yen, there were a total of 6 people. A bandit with a scar on his face took a step forward and said rudely, We have come all the way here from thousands of miles away, not to listen to your nonsense. Here, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th guards of the Liangzhou guards are here to help you fight Yudo. Don't pretend to be innocent after taking advantage of us. If you talk nonsense again, I'll beat you and the Yuto together. Li Kuang was so angry that his face turned ashen. Where did these bandits come from? They had no respect for military discipline and no respect for anyone. On the other hand, there was one who looked more handsome and kind. He cupped his hands and smiled. We've been in the Liangzhou guards for a long time, so our words are a little vulgar. Please forgive us, but Lord Li, you don't have to worry. The 7 of us won't be a burden to the Rundu. In fact, we've fought Yudo twice in the past. We're the most experienced in defeating Yudo. He Yen looked at Jiang Jiao's back and thought to himself, no wonder he's the young master of Shuajing Dojo. When it's time to act tough, he's never soft-hearted. Li Kuang didn't say anything, but Zhao Shiming immediately stepped forward and held Jiang Jiao's hand. He said with tears in his eyes, That's great. The Rundu needs heroes like you. What a joke. With one more person fighting Yudo, the Rundu could hold on for a while longer. Who knows, maybe they could hold on until General Fei Hong's reinforcements arrive. Also, what did they say just now? They've fought Yudo twice in the past and won both times? This kind of military advisor is simply a timely help. For a moment, Zhao Shiming didn't care about Li Kuang's expression. He only said warmly, Heroes, you're willing to risk your lives to come to the Rundu at such a critical time. You're really righteous. Unfortunately, the Rundu is surrounded by enemies and has no way to repay you. He turned around and saw the grapes on the table. He took it and offered it to them. These are the Rundu's specialty grapes. Everyone, please have a taste. Jiang Jiao passed the grapes to Xiao Mai. Xiao Mai couldn't ask for more. She held the bowl and ate happily. Now, there wasn't much food left, let alone grapes. Everyone in the room swallowed their saliva when they saw Xiao Mai eating happily. He Yen looked at Li Kuang. I have a few words to say to Lord Li. Li Kuang stared at He Yen. He didn't dare to say that he completely trusted this young man, but he couldn't find anything wrong with him for the time being. Hearing this, he wondered what this young man was thinking. He said, Come with me. He Yen followed Li Kuang into his study room. The rest of the people stayed outside. When they arrived at the study room, Li Kuang sat down and looked at him. He said coldly, There's no one else here. Muwen Lang, if you have something to say it. He Yen had worked with Li Kuang in the past, so he knew that Li Kuang still had doubts about him. This was understandable. If it were her and a group of people suddenly came and told her that they were here to help, she would also be suspicious. He Yen took out a scroll from his chest. On the way from the Liangzhou guard to the Rundu, when I had time to rest, I carefully recalled the scenes of the previous battle with the Yudo. I memorized all the characteristics and habits of the Yuto. I fought with the Yudo twice, once in the Liangzhou guard and once in Jiang. Land and water battles have their own characteristics. This should be beneficial to Lord Li. Li Kuang took the scroll with suspicion. As soon as he opened it, his expression changed slightly and became somewhat excited. Naturally, he could tell whether what was recorded on the scroll was true or not. At least some of the things written were similar to the experiences he gained from fighting with the Yudo. He had also written before, but it wasn't as clear and detailed as what was written on the scroll. This was admittedly because he hadn't fought with the Yudo as closely as he Yen had, but there was also another reason. His own abilities weren't as outstanding as he Yan's. For a moment, as he looked at the scroll, another person's figure appeared in his mind. Hirufei's ability to summarize battle matters was similarly accurate. He knew how precious the scroll was, and as a result, his gaze towards He Yen became slightly gentler. He asked, "Did you write all of this?" "My brothers and I wrote it together." He Yen didn't take all the credit for himself. Everyone has their own areas of expertise. If one person doesn't see it, the other person will notice it. This way, we can avoid any loopholes to the greatest extent. Li Kuang nodded. "Many thanks." He Yen looked at him. "Lord Li, forgive me for asking too much, but what do you plan to do from now on? Are you going to guard the city gate and wait for General Fei Hong to bring reinforcements? If General Fei Hong doesn't come, what should we do?" He Yen wasn't the first person to say this, and he wouldn't be the last either. Li Kuang sighed. "Other than this, what else can we do? There aren't many soldiers and horses in the city. Although it's a good fight to the death, once the city is breached, tens of thousands of people will die under Yudo's sword. The Rundu is only the first danger. Once the Rundu is breached, Jinling will be next, and then all the way to the north." He paused and said, "His Majesty wants us to defend the Rundu with our lives, so we can't leave the Rundu." He suddenly thought of something and looked at He Yen. "Brother He, did you come from outside the city? Actually, there is another way." He Yen had already guessed what he wanted to say. He smiled and said, "Lord Li, you don't want me to go to Hua Yuan and ask General Fei Hong for help, right?" "We have already sent 3 groups of people, but there is no news from them. Since Brother He was able to escape unscathed from the Battle of Jiang with military governor Xiao, I think you must have extraordinary skills. If you can go out of the city and find General Fei Hong, maybe the Rundu can still be saved." Could it be that Lord Li thinks that the people we sent out were stopped by someone on the way to find General Fei Hong and met with an accident? Li Kuang was stunned. "What do you mean?" "What I mean is that the possibility of the 3 groups of people being wiped out before reaching Hua Yuan is very small. There is no news from them until now, so I'm afraid that General Fei Hong is also in trouble. Now that everyone is trapped in the Rundu, we don't know anything about the situation outside. If we wait rashly, I'm afraid that we will harm the people in the city." He Yen didn't say it very clearly because he knew very well that the people sent by Li Kuang were probably killed by Hirufei the moment they saw Hirufei. Li Kuang had worked with General Fei Hong before. In order to prevent his identity from being exposed, Hirufei wanted Li Kuang to die without a burial place. Why would he help him, even if he was close by? In the past, based on Li Kuang's understanding of General Fei Hong, he would wait for Hirufei to come to his rescue until the end of the new year. "On the way here, did you hear any news about General Fei Hong?" Li Kuang was still unwilling to give up. He Yen shook his head. The man lowered his head and let out a long sigh. "The plan now is to delay for as long as we can." He Yen asked, "Did Lord Li only write to General Fei Hong to ask for help?" "There are other people, but they are too far away from the Rundu. I'm afraid they can't hold on for that long." He Yen thought for a moment. "Actually, Lord Li, have you ever thought that it's better to attack than to defend? Instead of waiting for death, why don't you take the initiative to attack?" Li Kuang, wishful thinking. The young man looked at him with a firm gaze. "It's not wishful thinking. It's just waiting for an opportunity to attack." Chapter 172. There weren't many people on the streets. The Yudo were waiting outside the city, and the commoners couldn't sleep at night. The street vendors had long since closed, and the streets were deserted and desolate. The rice shops had closed several months ago, and from time to time, women with children could be seen digging for wild vegetables to eat. Unfortunately, the people inside the city couldn't leave, and the people outside the city couldn't enter. Everything that could be eaten had long since been eaten, So how could there be any wild vegetables to be seen? Occasionally, they would see a mouse, and they would happily assume that there was meat to eat. Although everyone was worried about when the Yuto outside the city would attack, hunger had long since spread to every corner of the city. When the last grain of rice was eaten, even if the Yuto didn't attack the city, something big would happen in the city. In this bleak street, someone was walking slowly. It was a man and a woman, and both of them were extremely good-looking. The man wore an indigo robe, and he looked gentle and handsome. The woman had gorgeous features, and she was charming and moving. Xiang took out a piece of rations from his bag and handed it to Chu Zhao. "Fourth young master, the shops here have all closed. Eat some rations to fill your stomach first." This was the rations that the soldiers in the Liang province guard had eaten when they were out. It had always been stored in a bag, so it was dry and hard. Now that there were no inns to eat at, they could only make do. Chu Zhao took it and was about to eat it when he caught sight of a little girl standing under a tree. The little girl was about 5 or 6 years old. Her face was dirty, and her clothes were tattered. She wasn't wearing any shoes and was barefoot. He didn't know whose child she was, but her eyes were fixed on the rations in his hand without saying anything. Chu Zhao smiled and walked forward. He crouched down and handed the rations to her. The little girl stared blankly for a moment, then looked around. As if she was afraid that Chu Zhao would go back on his word, she snatched the rations and stuffed them into her bosom. She turned around and ran, quickly disappearing at the end of the deserted street. Chu Zhao stood up and Xiang said, "Fourth young master, it's fine." He shook his head. "The rundu won't last much longer." Xiang was somewhat worried. The two of them left the Liangzhou guards and hurried back to Shuajing. As soon as they arrived at the rundu, Yudo followed them. The city chief soldier Li Kuang gave the order to guard the city gate. They could neither enter nor exit, and were trapped here instead. "We have to leave the rundu as soon as possible," Xiang said softly. "Yudo has been trying to attack the city for the past few days. I think the main attack will be in the next few days. Once the city is breached, we will also be in danger." Those Yudo were cunning and ruthless. Even if Chu Zhao had a way to escape unscathed, she was still a woman after all, and an extremely beautiful one at that. Beautiful women in troubled times always met with tragic ends. Xiang could not help but shudder. Chu Zhao seemed to have read her mind and said, "We'll leave tomorrow." Xiang relaxed and said gratefully, "Thank you, fourth young master. Before that, we have to look for the city chief soldier Li Kuang." Chu Zhao smiled. "Without his help, we won't be able to leave the city." Xiang nodded. Even though the city gate was sealed, she did not doubt that they would not be able to escape unscathed. Every city had a secret passageway. The family members and important people of high-ranking officials would be sent out at critical times, so that they could survive. Li Kuang could not disregard Prime Minister Su's reputation. Sneak attack? Impossible, that's too risky. That's right, it's easy to say, but it's clearly suicide. Even though we rundu people are not afraid of death, we can't just become targets for others. In the room, everyone who heard He Yan's words spoke out. Li Kuang looked at He Yan. This young man spoke with confidence, but he did not know what he was planning. The various deputy soldiers of the city gate army, as well as He Yan's other brothers, were all in the room. He Yan waited for everyone to calm down a little before he said, "I know that you don't trust me now. However, I have already asked Lord Li. In the past 10 days, there were a total of 5 nights where the Yudo attacked the city gate at night. Even though they gave up in the end, they seemed to be probing. In the past 3 days, the Yudo did not make any moves. Based on my experience of fighting against the Yudo, it's not a good thing to be quiet at this time. The Yudo are probably planning an all-out attack. They have already figured out the situation in the Runda city. The soldiers in the Runda city have been exhausted by the Yudo for a long time. Their morale and stamina are not as good as before. If the Yudo launches an all-out attack, the city gate will definitely be breached." "What makes you say that? Are you cursing us?" A deputy soldier who looked a little irritable said angrily. "Can the truth be called a curse? Can you only listen to good words?" Wang Ba immediately said sarcastically, then I can say right now that the city gate of the Rundu city is as stable as stone and iron. It's impossible for the city to be breached, not in this lifetime. Do you believe that? Ask anyone on the street if they believe it or not. The Rundu city's defense is based on self-deception. I've never seen such a fucking funny thing. He originally came to the Rundu city with Hien because he was willing to sacrifice himself for righteousness. Now that his hot-bloodedness was not being cherished, he immediately turned his hot-bloodedness into anger and scolded that person until he was speechless. The atmosphere was a little tense. Huang Xiong looked at Li Kuang and said, "Lord Li, my brother, he is not simple. He is very proficient in the art of war. In the Liang Province Guard, he is the best besides military governor Xiao." He spared no effort to flatter Hien. Since he said that we can launch a sneak attack, then he must have his own way. Since you all are rejecting his idea so arbitrarily, why don't you listen to what he has to say first and discuss it peacefully? He spoke very amiably and maturely. However, when he spoke, he occasionally stroked the treasured saber at his waist that was emitting a murderous aura. It made people shudder. Someone boldly said, Lord He, it's not that we don't want to launch a sneak attack. It's just that we don't have many soldiers to begin with. If we launch a sneak attack, we won't be able to return. There will be even fewer soldiers guarding the city. Moreover, those Yudo are watching the city gate very closely. I'm afraid that before we even leave the city, we will be shot full of holes by their arrows. How can we sneak into their camp at night? Arrows? Hien paused and looked at the person who just spoke. Do the Yudo have a lot of arrows? A lot. That person replied with a bitter face. Actually, when the Yudo first came, we were fighting with them on the city gate. However, later on, our arrows became very few, but they still had a lot of arrows. Previously, someone had planned to ambush and assassinate their commander, but he didn't expect that the moment he stepped out of the city gate, he would be shot full of arrows before he could even sneak in. Those Yudo chopped off his head and hung it on a tree outside the city to make fun of him. At this point, everyone present was so angry that their eyes were about to burst. This kind of provocation was really unbearable. You mean we have very few arrows, but they have a lot of arrows? Hien asked. The other party nodded. Hien looked at Li Kuang again. If we lure those Yudo to the city gate when we launch a sneak attack, and the archers on the city gate tower are ready, how many Yudo can we kill? Thousands to 10,000, Li Kuang replied. But we don't have that many arrows. We do. Everyone was stunned. Then let those Yudo make arrows for us. The young man smiled, his eyes were shockingly bright. For a moment, Li Kuang thought of another person. He didn't see the face under the mask that year, but he remembered that pair of eyes, just like the eyes in front of him, confident and calm. No matter how chaotic the situation was, it was a miracle that he could kill his way out of a siege. With him, the morale of the army was stable and they would never give up. What do you want to do? He came back to his senses and asked. I need to gather all the craftsmen and women in the city to make straw dolls for me. It was late at night. In the wilderness outside the city gate, thousands of tents stood quietly. Looking from afar, the wilderness seemed to have turned into endless hills, and the atmosphere was astonishing. Patrolling soldiers were walking around nearby. Wyatt, the leader of the Rundu that led the army to attack the Rundu, was holding a jar of wine and pouring it into a bowl. The fragrance of the wine was strong, and after drinking a bowl, he patted his stomach and smacked his lips. This is the wine brewed by the Rundu people? What's the difference between it and sweet water? It's just a woman's preference. Everyone in the Dowei likes to drink this. No wonder they're so weak and timid. One slash and they're broken. The trusted aide said flatteringly, Yes, 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 how can the wine of the Dowei compare to the strong wine of the Yuto? Wyatt laughed and said, Go to the captives and pick a few women. The Rundu people had closed the city gates, but when they were stationed here, there were still many people wandering outside the city. This included the villages nearby. The Yudo soldiers swept these villages clean, leaving only the women behind and killing everyone else, not even sparing the children. The wine had also been stolen from the village. The commoners did not even have the strength to trust a chicken. They easily destroyed the entire village as if they were chopping melons and vegetables. The Yuto envied the Dawei people, but they also looked down on the Dawei people. They envied the Dawei people for their beautiful silk, exquisite porcelain, vast land, and beautiful houses. They lived in the desert, beside the grasslands, and there was nothing but the sound of the wind. They looked down on the Dawei people for being weak and timid. They didn't even have the ability to protect themselves. They defended their so-called benevolent government and waited for others to invade. A piece of meat that no one protected would always attract all kinds of gazes. The Yudo had been silent for many years and finally couldn't take it anymore. "We've already waited here for a month," the trusted aide said. "He Rufei still hasn't come." Just as the king said, "He Rufei won't come again." Hyatt laughed. "That's great." The Dawei valued the civil and despised the military. After so many years, they had produced many generals, but the ones that remained were General Fei Hong and General Feng. That idiot Maka took advantage of his status as the king's cousin and volunteered to take Jiang. Who knew that he would meet Xiao Huijin? He was unlucky. Unfortunately, the 150,000 troops were all wiped out in the Yudo Empire, causing the Yudo Empire to suffer greatly. He wasn't Maka. Since he chose the Rundu, it must be because he had absolute confidence. There's a saying in the Dawei, "Busy as fire on the other side of the river, cold as ice on the other side of the river." What we're doing now is watching the fire on the other side of the river. So what if General Fei Hong can't be killed in a head-on clash? He'll have other weaknesses. Using power and beauties, that's all there is to it. Sometimes, I really don't understand the Dawei people. Hyatt's face was filled with genuine confusion. Why do they always like to kill each other? If there were people like Xiao Huijin and He Rufei, the king would definitely give them the best treatment. They would become the two sharpest swords of the Yudo Empire. With them, the world would be ours. However, the Dawei people can't bear to see such good generals. Once someone rises, they'll trample them into the mud. However, this is good. If Xiao Huijin and He Rufei really are invulnerable, it'll be a disaster for the Yudo Empire. The trusted aide also said, "That's right, this is good. This is all thanks to the king's many years of planning. He let the fire grow bigger and bigger. Now that they don't need us, the Dawei people are helping the Yudo Empire fight their own people." Unbridled laughter came from within the tent. At this time, the Yudo soldiers who had just left brought back a few Dawei women. They were all captives from the nearby villages. These women were still young and had some beauty. The moment they entered, they trembled. Hyatt had a cruel personality, and many women had been trampled to death by him. He laughed sinisterly and grabbed a woman beside him. Before he could do anything, the sound of a horn came from outside. Everyone was stunned. "What's going on? Someone's coming out of the city." The tent was immediately thrown into chaos, and Hyatt lost interest in continuing. Pushing the woman aside, he stood up and walked out. A Yuchuo soldier hurriedly came forward to report, "General, there's someone coming down from the gate tower." What? Hyatt was shocked. The Rundu people were as cowardly as mice, only daring to hide in the city and not making a sound. They had tried to sneak attack once, but before that person could come down, they were shot by their Yudo. Now they actually dared to come again? This was somewhat out of Hyatt's expectations. Logically speaking, the Rundu people should not be like this. Could it be that they were at the end of their rope and had decided to fight to the death? Hyatt walked out of the wilderness with large strides. "Let's go and take a look." Outside the pitch-black city gate, there were indeed hundreds of ropes hanging down. It seemed like there were people coming down from the city gate one after another. From afar, there were quite a number of people. "Are these people crazy?" A Yuto soldier said, "If they're not here to die, then what are they?" Our Yudo country has a type of dog badger that is as cowardly as a mouse. It's said that when it meets a hunter, not only will it not run, it will even rush towards the hunter's arrows. I think these Rundu people are like that. They're already scared out of their wits. They can't even tell north from south. Prey that's delivered to our doorstep, how can we not hunt it? Hyatt was also pleased. The battle had not even started, and these Rundu people were already scared out of their wits. This showed how powerful the Yudo army was. He immediately said, "Order the archers to prepare. It's a good opportunity to practice their aim. Those who didn't get enough last time can practice their archery this time. There won't be many such good targets in the future." The Yudo archers immediately went to prepare. Arrows flew towards the people on the ropes. In just a moment, those people were turned into porcupines. One person was hit by countless arrows. The Runda people seemed to have realized this and quickly put away the ropes and replaced them with new people. Quiet was amused. "I think they've really gone crazy. This is what the Dawei people call it, the courage of the ignorant." His trusted aide racked his brain and came up with a phrase. "What courage of the ignorant? I think it's the stupidity of the ignorant." Quiet laughed and ordered loudly, "Next batch of archers, get ready." On the city gate tower, ropes were constantly being hoisted up. Each rope had many people on it. These people's chests and backs were full of arrows. When they were fished up, they did not look like humans at all. They looked like targets, which made one's hair stand on end. But if one looked closely, one would realize that these were all straw men. They were dressed in black, and under the cover of the night, they were no different from real people. Xiao Mai excitedly said, "So many arrows, so many arrows. Ahigu, we're rich." "Rich Mayes." Wang Ba was disinterested. "These aren't money. They can't be eaten." On the other hand, Li Kuang was very excited. He was almost in tears. They didn't have any arrows and could only be beaten by the Yudo. They didn't even dare to show their faces on the city tower during the day. The sentries patrolling on the city tower would be killed by 1 or 2 arrows every day. They didn't have enough arrows to fight back. But now they had. This batch of black-clothed scarecrows brought out countless arrows. He Yen released another batch. Before the Wu Tua people discovered them, they would be able to harvest a lot. What kind of miracle was this? This was a business without any cost. During the day, He Yen asked Li Kuang to gather all the craftsmen and women in the city to make straw men. When the people heard that it was to deal with the Yuto, even the children joined in. In just one day, they made a lot of straw men. He Yen also asked Li Kuang to borrow a lot of black clothes for the straw men to wear. When this plan was first proposed, Li Kuang was still skeptical. Would the Yuto really be so stupid? Would they really obediently send the arrows over? The scene in front of him had already confirmed his doubts. The Yudo was really that stupid. He looked at the young man standing on the city gate tower and felt admiration in his heart. No matter what Rundu's future was like in the future, at least tonight's scarecrow-borrowed arrows could allow Rundu to resist for a few more days. Li Kuang walked to He Yan's side and said, "Brother, he's amazing foresight. I'm ashamed of my inferiority." He Yen turned his head and looked at him. The wind blew the young man's hair around his ears. He smiled carelessly, "It's just a fluke. These Yudo think that they have a lot of people and are arrogant. They are determined to get the Rundu. When they see the straw men, they won't think of anything else. The Yudo thinks that we have nothing. We have no foreign aid, no weapons, and no troops. So we'll give them a surprise attack. What if we fail?" The young man said, "Then we'll think of another way. In this world, there's always more than one way." Li Kuang was speechless. He always felt that this young man gave him a feeling of déjà vu. He shook his head and threw away the ridiculous thought in his mind. He only knew why these thoughts appeared. It was because the situation today was very similar to the situation in the past. It was even more difficult. Tonight was just the beginning. He Yen looked down the city tower. On the field in the distance, he could faintly see the sparks of fire. That was the Yudo's camp. If there is something from nothing, then there is also something. If there is something that cannot last long, then it is easy to sense. If there is something from nothing, then it will become real from nothing, and it will become real from nothing. If there is nothing that cannot be defeated, then there will be defeated enemies. Back then, when He Yen read this paragraph in the military book, he was also very puzzled. He took the military book and went to find Lu Buang. Lu Buang only said, "Nothing is fake. The purpose is to cover up the truth. If you want to successfully create something from nothing, you have to grasp the other party's mentality. This is the highest level of the battle of wits between generals. He Yen had fought with the Yudo 3 times. Every general of the Yudo looked down on everything and was especially proud and arrogant in their hearts. Perhaps it was related to their country's worship of powerful military force. They thought that they had everything with troops and horses, but they forgot that arrogant soldiers were bound to be defeated. She looked at the arrows flying over endlessly, and a smile appeared on her lips. Change to the next batch. The arrows flew in the direction of the Rundu city gate aggressively. What's wrong with the Rundu people? Aren't they afraid? How many people have we changed? A Yuto soldier asked. Huyate also had some doubts in his heart. These Rundu people seemed to be coming endlessly to die. It had already been several hours. Were they going to kill all the Rundu soldiers here? The sky was already bright. They had been shooting arrows here for the entire night. A bird flew across the sky and landed on a tree branch. It chirped, breaking the silence in the surroundings. It was also at this time that Huyate suddenly thought of something. He asked, "You have been shooting arrows all night. Have you heard those people scream?" Everyone looked at each other and shook their heads. It was very quiet, too quiet. They had shot so many arrows, and those Rundu people had died miserably. Why did they not scream? Why was this? Were they afraid that the people in the city would hear their screams and panic? Or were they afraid that it would affect the morale of the people? It would be fine if it was because of this, but if it was because of other reasons? A trace of uneasiness flashed through his heart. "Stop!" Huyate shouted. "Stop shooting immediately!" The Yudo stopped their actions and waited for Huyate's next order. The arrows stopped at the same time. He Yen, who was sitting on the city wall, yawned and shook his head regretfully. "Aya, we've been discovered." Li Kuang was already very satisfied. In this night, they had harvested at least 100,000 arrows. This was faster and less laborious than craftsmen. The soldier on the city wall pulled up the last scarecrow covered in ropes and rubbed his sore wrist. He turned around and asked He Yen, "Sir, do we need to put down more scarecrows?" "Do it," He Yen said. "Put down a clean one for them to see clearly." Li Kuang was shocked. "Brother He, won't this let the Yudo know our background? It will be difficult to get more arrows in the future." He Yen smiled. "Lord Li, I didn't make scarecrows to borrow arrows. After this night, the Yudo have already discovered that something is wrong. We can't hide it. They've bullied us for so long. Now let's anger them to death." The first ray of sunlight broke through the clouds and shone on the plains, illuminating the vermilion city wall of the Rundu. Outside the city gate, a figure was quietly hanging. This figure was hanging in the air, swaying. At first, it was blurry, but then it gradually became clear under the sunlight, landing in the eyes of the Yuto in the distance. A scarecrow wearing black clothes. Huyate was furious. Chapter 173. Inside the Rundu, there was a burst of cheers. Under the city gate, the soldiers were overjoyed when they saw the ground full of arrows that they couldn't even finish using their carriages. The Yudo's arrows were sharper and stronger than Dawei's arrows. Now they could obtain tens of thousands of arrows without any effort. No one expected such a thing to happen. Borrowing the arrows was secondary. The most important thing was that the grievances they felt from being attacked by the Yudo all these days were swept away. The Yudo had set them up, and this time, they made the Yudo suffer such a big loss. They were speechless. They're just a bunch of boorish people who only know how to use their strength. Zhao Shiming stroked his beard and said with a smile, "They don't know how to use their wits." He looked at the young man who was walking at the front and jogged to catch up with him. "This time, it's all thanks to Xiaohe." "Xiaohe's already called Xiaohe?" He Yen smiled. "If everyone in the city didn't work together to make so many scarecrows, I wouldn't be able to do this alone." Zhao Shiming's impression of this young man became even better. He thought to himself, no wonder he was promoted to an official at such a young age. He didn't steal the credit nor was he arrogant. His temper is much better than Li Kuang's. He asked, then what do we do next? He Yan turned to look at the old man, then looked at the people around her. The soldiers around her were also staring at her with burning eyes. When she first arrived at the Rundu, she only felt that the city was lifeless. Everyone was just waiting for death to come. Now, only one night had passed, and there was something called hope in their eyes. Hope was always very precious. I will discuss the next plan with Lord Li. However, there's one thing that I need your help with, Lord Zhao. Yan said. Zhao Shiming quickly smiled and said, Of course. Shall he please say it? For this matter, I still need to trouble all the craftsmen in the city. She lowered her eyes. Help me make a mask. The sooner the better. In the hall, Li Kuang turned around and looked at the two people in front of him. Yi Luo stood behind Li Kuang and stared at the beautiful woman in the room. Ying Xiang handed over the token and scroll. Li Kuang took them and looked at them before saying to Chu Zhao, So it's Fourth Young Master Chu. The name, Fourth Young Master Chu, was much more famous than the Wu and Lang who had come that day. After all, he had a father who was known throughout the country for being a playboy, and a teacher who was powerful enough to overturn the imperial court. He was also born handsome and gentle. It was hard not to notice such a person in the crowd. Lord Li, my young master, was trapped in the Rundu on his way back to Shuajing. Now that the situation in the Rundu is like this, the Prime Minister has ordered us to ask Lord Li to escort my young master out of the city? When Yi Luo heard this, he let out a sigh of relief. This woman was so beautiful. If she stayed in the Rundu, it would be unsettling. What if Li Kuang took a liking to her and took her as his concubine? She couldn't give up her position as the most favored concubine. Li Kuang looked at Chu Zhao and said, It's not difficult. No matter how dissatisfied he was, he had to give face to Su Jingfu. Li Kuang couldn't help but think of He Yan. In this world, people were different. He Yan was far away in Liangzhou, but because he was worried about the Rundu, he traveled thousands of miles to live and die with the Rundu. On the other hand, Chu Xilan was in the Rundu, but he wanted to escape unscathed and leave as soon as possible. However, he didn't have the ability to force people to stay. The tunnel that General Fei Hong had dug back then was to move the commoners over, but now it had become a tunnel to send these powerless young masters out. Li Kuang suppressed his resentment and unwillingness, but a smile appeared on his face. This smile could even be said to be a bit flattering. Fourth Young Master Chu, after you leave the city, if you pass by Jinling or other cities, can you ask for reinforcements for the Rundu? He awkwardly rubbed his hands. Right now, the Rundu is in danger. If the Prime Minister is willing to help, of course, Chu Zhao smiled. Once this servant and I leave the city safely, we will definitely find a way to ask for reinforcements for the Rundu. Thank you. Li Kuang was a bit sullen. When did Da Wei's survival become a joke in the hands of the Prime Minister? The Yudo probably already knew that the imperial family was corrupt, so they took advantage of the situation. Just as they were talking, another person came in. This person said, Lord Li, after today, I plan to. He Yan's voice suddenly stopped. He looked at Chu Zhao and said in surprise, Brother Chu? Brother He? Chu Zhao was also stunned. Why are you here? He Yan didn't expect to meet Chu Zhao in the Rundu. He only said, He came to help. What? Li Kuang was also stunned. You two know each other? Fourth Young Master Chu stayed in the Liang Province Guard for a period of time. He Yan asked, Brother Chu, you still haven't told me why you are here. When Ying Xiang and I were returning to the capital, we passed by the Rundu. The Yuto attacked the city, so we were temporarily trapped in the city. I didn't expect that Brother He would come. When Chu Zhao said this, he actually smiled. We can be considered to be fated. Who would have thought that she and Chu Zhao had been separated from each other for such a long time? She didn't expect to meet him in Rundu. This really was as Chu Zhao had said, let's go together. Although she had many questions, now wasn't the time to talk. He Yan said to Chu Zhao, Brother Chu, I still have something to discuss with Lord Li. If you aren't in a hurry, can you wait until I finish speaking with Lord Li before coming back? It's fine, I'm not in a hurry. Chu Zhao made a pleased gesture. He Yen said to Li Kuang, "Lord Li, let's go inside and talk." Li Kuang and He Yen entered the inner room. Yi Luo glanced at the two of them, then bowed and left the room. Ying Xiang said hesitantly, "Fourth young master, we won't leave for now." "But the Prime Minister, I have my own plans." After a while, Ying Xiang said, "Fourth young master, are you not leaving because you're worried about Miss He?" Chu Zhao didn't answer her question. His smile faded. "Ying Xiang, you've said too much." Ying Xiang didn't say anything. Inside the room, Li Kuang turned around and looked at He Yen. "You still want to hang scarecrows? The Yudo fell for it once, they won't fall for it a second time. Those Yudo are stupid, but they're also cunning. After this lesson, they'll only be more suspicious in the future. Anyway, there's no loss in hanging scarecrows at night. Why don't Lord Li give it a try? If they're still willing to fall for it, it'll be good to collect more arrows." "What if they don't fall for it?" "That's even better." Li Kuang shook his head. "Brother He, I don't understand what you're trying to do." He Yen looked at Li Kuang. She had also fought alongside Li Kuang on the battlefield in the past. Li Kuang was a serious and old-fashioned person. When he fought, he was very methodical. Although he was capable, he didn't like to use tricks. He Yen turned around and looked at the map hanging on the wall in the room. "Lord Li, if you were the Wuduo people, and you knew that you were played like a fool last night, and you played the same trick again today, what would you do tomorrow if it was the same?" "I would be so angry that I wouldn't fall for it again." "You wouldn't shoot arrows at the people coming down from the city gate tower?" "Of course." "That's good." He Yen turned around and looked at him with a smile. "Then for the third time, our people can directly leave the city. After all, they'll think that the people coming down from the city gate tower are fake scarecrows." Li Kuang was stunned. Everyone had heard of the story of the boy who cried wolf. They were fooled once or twice, but the third time, even a fool wouldn't believe it. Yudo was the same. They lost so many arrows in vain. Even if they had a few more chances, they wouldn't shoot at the scarecrows. They didn't know that in the last time, the scarecrows were quietly replaced by real Rundu soldiers. They sneaked into their camp under the cover of the night. Li Kuang understood He Yan's meaning, but there was still something he didn't understand. "You mean we should let them leave the city?" "Lord Li, I've said it before. It's better to attack than to defend. If we continue to defend like this, sooner or later, the Yudo will immediately attack the city. Yesterday's arrow borrowing had already angered them. Now is the time when they're least calm. We can still find an opportunity to attack them after they've recovered. The Rundu's troops won't be able to stop them from breaking the city gate." Li Kuang's heart jumped when he heard this. He couldn't help but say, "Of course I know this. But even if we sneak attack at night, we still don't have enough troops. It's impossible if we don't wipe out the Yudo soldiers in one fell swoop. What we need to do is burn their provisions and break their morale. Without provisions, the Yudo will panic and their morale will be unstable. They will be even more hesitant against the Rundu and buy us some time." He Yen said, "Lord Li, ask for help from Jinling." "Jinling?" He Yen looked at him. "Lord Li, don't place your hopes on hopeless people. General Fei Hong won't come. If he came, he would have come a long time ago. If the Rundu wants to defend, we must find another way to survive. No matter how much you trust He Rufei, the lives of tens of thousands of Rundu citizens cannot be compared to your trust." The young man's eyes were firm and his tone was unquestionable. For a moment, Li Kuang's heart wavered. After a while, he looked at He Yen. "That's easy for you to say. Even if you sneak attack at night, how can you guarantee that you can burn the Yudo's provisions? They have a lot of troops guarding the provisions. I'm afraid that before they even get close, they will be discovered by the Yudo soldiers. 500 men. What? I need 500 elite soldiers," the young man said. "Lord Li knows better than me what the vanguard means. With me as the leader, the 500 vanguard will definitely burn their provisions. Even if we die on the battlefield under the blades of the Yudo, it doesn't matter. Lord Li, please continue to defend the city. Don't waste everyone's sacrifice." "Of course," she said. "If we can bring back Hu Yate's head, that would be even better." Ever since the day the scarecrow borrowed the arrows, for 3 days in a row, when night fell, dozens of ropes would slowly hang down from the Rundu's city tower. There would be people hanging on the ropes that would fall to the ground. Not long after, another group of people would follow the same pattern. At first, the Yudo would test the waters by shooting dozens or hundreds of arrows. In the end, they were too lazy to be fooled and only shot a few scattered arrows before stopping. All the craftsmen in the city gathered together and worked through the night to make masks. Wang Ba dragged an ox cart full of boxes over. He and the others moved all the boxes to the ground and said to He Yen, "It's all here." Under everyone's gaze, He Yen walked forward and bent down to open the lid of a box. The box was filled with masks. Zhao Shiming picked up a mask and looked at it. He saw that the mask had a green face and fangs, and its eyes were like copper bells. It was very scary. He couldn't help but let go of the mask and let it fall back into the box. He muttered, "It's quite scary." "Ahigo, are we going to wear these masks to fight the Yudo?" Xiao Mai asked nervously. "These are all masks of evil spirits. It's really scary." He Yen smiled. "Is it scary? I don't think so. When they were in Jiang, a liar mask was enough to make Ling Xiu and the others run away. If they saw the masks now, they would probably be scared to death." When Zhao Shiming recruited all the craftsmen in the Rundu to make the masks for her, He Yen only had one request. The more creepy and scary the masks looked, the better. It would be best if they looked like the little ghosts in the 18 levels of hell, ferocious and ugly. When she looked at the masks, she felt that they were really ugly but not scary. It was probably because in her life, humans were much scarier than ghosts. The truly creepy and scary things she had seen were far worse than this. Among the masks in the box, the one at the top was particularly different. It didn't look like there were any fancy patterns on it. The whole mask seemed to be made of iron, and it was airtight. Only a pair of eyes and chin could be seen. He Yen picked up the mask and gently covered her face. Wang Ba was dissatisfied. "Why does yours look so much better? Can't you treat everyone equally? Why do we have to wear something that even dogs think is ugly?" Li Kuang sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "General He." Everyone looked at Li Kuang. Jiang Jiao smiled. "Lord Li, brother, he is only Mu and Lang now. He hasn't been promoted to general yet." Li Kuang realized that his words were misunderstood by others. He explained, "I mean, this mask is General Fei Hong's mask. When he and He Rufei fought side by side in the past, He Rufei had worn a mask that looked very similar to this one. He wanted to take it off a few times, but it was like the mask grew on He Rufei's face. He couldn't take it off no matter how hard he tried. Later, his beloved concubine Luo told him that He Rufei cared a lot about the scar on his face. It was better not to expose other people's shortcomings. Li Kuang gave up on the idea. A few years later, He Rufei returned to the capital. It was said that he took off his mask in front of the emperor. He had a handsome and upright face, and it was very stunning. When Li Kuang heard this, he was very angry. He felt that this person was crazy. What he said about being ugly and unattractive was all nonsense. It was possible that he was just looking for a gimmick for himself to make others feel the contrast. Apart from seeing He Rufei once when he went to court in the capital, the two of them hadn't seen each other for a few years. Now, he saw the shadow of He Rufei in the youth in front of him. He was heroic and generous as always. But he definitely wasn't He Rufei. Li Kuang muttered in his heart. Could it be that He Rufei had a brother in his family? This youth was still young, but he already had the demeanor of a general. And they both had the surname He. Did He Yuansheng also have an illegitimate child outside like Chu Linfeng? He Yen didn't know that Li Kuang's thoughts had already drifted so far. On the side, Jiang Jiao asked, "General Fei Hong's mask? Lord Li means that this mask is very similar to General Fei Hong's mask?" It had been too long. He couldn't remember the details of He Rufei's mask, but he felt that it wasn't far off. He nodded, "It's very similar." He Yen smiled slightly. Ever since He Rufei replaced her as Fei Hong, she never thought that there would be a day when she would wear this familiar mask. "Brother He, what are you trying to do?" Huang Xiong was puzzled. Fake and real, real and fake. Q8 also hasn't seen the real General Fei Hong. But he must have heard of the masked general's fierce battle with the Western Chang people. If I wear this mask and kill my way into the enemy camp, they won't know who's under the mask. Their hearts will be wary, and their morale will be in chaos. That will be our chance. Li Kuang suddenly understood. I want to pretend to be General Fei Hong, the youth said. The night gradually deepened, and it began to drizzle tonight. The sound of insects could be heard in the wilderness. The Yuchuo soldiers were resting in their tents. A few days ago, Li Kuang's scarecrow to borrow arrows in run had caused them to waste 100,000 arrows. They had been cleaning up these past few days. 100,000 arrows was not a small number, and their original plans had to be changed. Q8 was flustered and exasperated, and he killed several archers. And Li Kuang's scarecrow to borrow arrows continued. Every night, there would be scarecrows hanging down from the city walls. At the beginning, the Yuchuo soldiers still had vigilant thoughts when shooting arrows, but later, they were no longer fooled, and even felt that Li Kuang's actions were mocking and humiliating them. Q8 angrily said, "When the day comes, I will bury all the Rundu soldiers alive. I will chop that bastard Li Kuang into pieces in front of the entire Rundu city." After all, being played in circles was truly too shameful. He was still mocking Maka earlier, but he didn't expect that it would be his turn so soon. "General, what if Li Kuang releases those scarecrows again tonight?" The subordinate asked. "What do we do?" Q8 asked with a dark face. "Do you want me to be a fool again? Idiot." The subordinate didn't dare to reply. On the city walls, He Yen, dressed in black, was currently tying ropes around her body. Behind her, there were 500 elite soldiers that Li Kuang had selected for her from the Rundu soldiers, each of them outstanding in their own way. Xiao Mai and Hong Shan weren't originally part of the Liang province vanguard, and their skills were only average. Looking at the brothers preparing, Xiao Mai worriedly said, "Ai he gu, those Yuto, will they really not shoot arrows here? If they shoot here, wouldn't it be too late for everyone to turn back?" He Yen stood on her tiptoes and patted his head. Although Xiao Mai had already grown taller than her, there were many times when he was more like a child, which always made He Yen think of He Yunxing. She patiently said, "All things under the heavens are born from something, and something is born from nothing." On the first day, we used the scarecrow to borrow arrows to create this kind of illusion and purposely let the Yudo see through it. They thought that they knew our plan and let down their guard. After that, they turned nothing into something, turned what was false into reality, and turned what was false into reality. When our people really attack them at night, Q8 will definitely think that it's fake and won't be on guard. We will take advantage of this opportunity to catch them off guard. "But how can you be sure?" Xiao Mai didn't give up. He Yen said, "There is nothing in this world that can be confirmed for sure. I can only try my best to guess what Q8 is thinking." This was a psychological battle, and also a huge gamble. He Yen turned her head and looked at the people behind her. These carefully selected Rundu soldiers, because of the long time spent fighting the Yudo, looked very thin and weak, but their eyes were burning with fire. They were attacked in front of their home, and now they finally had a chance to fight back, even if the price was their lives. The Wei men didn't care. When we go down, maybe the Yudo won't shoot arrows, but maybe they will. The brothers who are shot must not make a sound or move. He Yen paused for a moment, then continued, "Only when we treat ourselves as scarecrows will the Yudo believe that we are really scarecrows." Li Kuang's face was solemn. He naturally knew what He Yen meant. When there is war, there will be sacrifices, especially tonight's 500 elite soldiers. If they made a sound or moved after being shot, it was very likely that the Yudo would find out. At that time, all their previous efforts would be wasted. But to endure the pain of being shot was too difficult, too difficult. "Maybe this arrow will injure us, maybe we will die." He Yen looked at everyone and said calmly, "But we have to remember what our goal is. Even if we die, we will die to protect the Rundu. The Yudo's arrows don't have a specific target, it can hit anyone, including me. I need you to understand the possible consequences. If anyone can't accept it now, you can stand up and leave. Otherwise, If the entire night attack fails because of one person, I will not let you off easily. The young man's eyes were cold, and his eyes were cold. Usually he was gentle and easy to talk to, but when he was really cold, no one dared to refute. No one stood up. Li Kuang was surprised to find that he had unknowingly handed over the command of the rundu to this young man. He was still young, and he didn't even know this Mu and Lang called He Yen. But he had the ability to convince people, just like that year, when General Fei Hong was still the deputy general. Is everyone ready? Very good. He Yen curled her lips and put the mask on her face. The mask covered the young man's face, and even the immature childishness disappeared, revealing only a pair of beautiful eyes that were as sharp as a knife, concealing all the sharpness of the young man. She walked in front of Li Kuang, and before Li Kuang could react, she snatched the sword from Li Kuang's hand. Lord Li, lend me your sword. Hey! Li Kuang was slightly annoyed. This person did it a little too naturally. Li Kuang's sword was a good sword. Although it was not as good as Qing Lang's, it was still sharper and lighter than ordinary swords. He Yen weighed the sword in her hand. For a moment, it was as if she had returned to the battlefield in the past. She was still the general who led the Fuyue army to charge and break through the enemy lines. General Fei Hong cannot be without a sword. She turned her head and said coldly, "Boys, put on your masks and follow me." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.